Chapter 1192. How dare you kill my trusted general in my territory? You sure have guts. At this moment, a faint voice came from all directions. Your Majesty? The Kunlun Empress and the three-tailed Scorpion King subconsciously raised their heads, and their eyes flickered with surprise. Not good. Xiahou Wang suddenly felt a terrifying warning. Even his divine soul was trembling, and that sense of danger seemed to be descending in the next second. He couldn't care less about killing the Kunlun Empress and the three-tailed Scorpion King. A strange lotus appeared above his head. The earthy yellow lotus bloomed from the top of his head. The ninth-grade lotus bloomed one by one, and a faint yellow light appeared, forming a huge light screen in front of him. Innate earth divine light. Xiahou Wang's eyes flashed with a hint of fierceness. 1,000 feet away, a black-robed figure suddenly walked out from the void. Looking at Xiahou Wang, who was armed to the teeth, a hint of coldness appeared at the corner of his mouth. A wave of cold black light that could freeze heaven and earth pierced through time and space, suddenly descending on Xiahou Wang and drowning him completely. Sizzle! The temperature within a few thousand miles suddenly increased, and a huge ice mountain appeared. True God Law, Ice Seal 30,000 miles. The Kunlun Empress and the three-tailed Scorpion King looked at each other, and both of them secretly gasped. This ice seal was really terrifying to the extreme. The two of them only sensed it slightly, and that cold air could even freeze their divine souls. Qin Feng's expression didn't change after freezing the mountain lord Xiahou Wang in one move. Qin Feng arrived early and witnessed the Kunlun Empress and the three-tailed Scorpion King self-destructing their phoenix-tailed Jade Guqin in desperation. The reason why he only appeared now was to wait for an opportunity. After freezing Xiahou Wang in one move, Qin Feng didn't relax at all. The Chaos Moon divine power around him changed, and a dense and pure demonic aura was emitted from his body. He instantly transformed into an extraterrestrial true demon. His figure flashed, and he suddenly disappeared from the spot. Boom! It was as if in the next second, the black ice that Xiahou Wang was trapped in suddenly exploded, and countless pieces of ice scattered like raindrop. On the spot, earthy yellow spiritual light flickered around Xiahou Wang, and a pearl around him emitted boundless light. His cold eyes scanned the surroundings. He was suddenly ambushed and sealed in that terrifying ice, causing him to suffer a hidden loss. He was incomparably furious. Although he didn't use his combat strength, the icy blue coldness invaded his internal organs, and in a short period of time, his strength greatly decreased by a level. With just one strike, he was completely at a disadvantage. Not good. However, in the next moment, his expression changed and his heart skipped a beat. The man-flower of the heaven, earth, and man-flowers above his head shook violently. A faintly discernible aura that he had not come into contact with for a long time appeared in his senses. This is an inner demon. No, it's an extraterrestrial demon? Xiahou Wang's face instantly turned extremely pale. Why is there such a terrifying existence here? Fear flashed across his eyes. This was very similar to the records of the extraterrestrial demons that he had obtained from the Taoist inheritance. In that inheritance, once a cultivator encountered an inner demon, it could be said that there was only a slim chance of survival. His emotions surged, and without a sound, a black aura suddenly filled his heart. Xiahou Wang had a bad feeling in his heart. He was very clear about the characteristics of this kind of heart demon. Once one's state of mind fluctuated, it would be very easy for it to take advantage of the situation. 10,000 tranquil mantra. His face was pale as he sucked in a breath of cold air. He sat down cross-legged, and the strange bead around him emitted a treasure light to protect his body. In that inheritance, he was no stranger to inner demons. At the origin of that inheritance, there were also many cultivation methods to expel and suppress inner demons. This 10,000 tranquil mantra was a supreme cultivation method to purify inner demons. In Xiahou Wang's body, he transformed into an extraterrestrial true demon. Qin Feng easily penetrated the layer of protective divine power outside Xiahou Wang's body and used the negative thoughts caused by the change in his state of mind to enter his body. Just as he entered his body, Qin Feng felt an extremely different cultivation system from the Spirit Sea continent and even the primordial land's cultivation system. A strange energy fluctuation, similar in nature to divine power, but extremely different from divine power. Furthermore, it had a very strong restraining power against inner demons. The other party's state of mind seemed to be revolving and changing with a strange sutra. It was as pure as snow and had an extraordinary protective power against inner demons. In the center of the divine soul, there was a cold and flawless moon. As the sutra changed, he seemed to have comprehended the power of goodness and beauty, strengthening his mind. A light that could purify the soul of all things appeared and shone in the depths of his sea of consciousness. Looks like it's another extraterrestrial expert, but I don't know if it was projected from some creator space. Qin Feng was secretly surprised. The cultivators of this cultivation system did not have strong physical bodies, but their souls were relatively pure and closer to the laws of heaven and earth. They were very difficult to deal with. However, this was not a problem for Qin Feng. Endless demonic Tao, reincarnation of all lives. The power of the demonic Tao law around him evolved into the power of the extraterrestrial mortal world of billions of lives in the world, turning into a scarlet invisible millstone. It suddenly locked on, and the cold moon formed by Xiahou Wang's divine soul swept over like a stream of light. In the next moment, the cold and flawless moon was dyed crimson. Buzz, buzz. In the center, the incantations spat out by the divine soul became more and more urgent. It struggled fiercely, and the light that erupted turned into extremely pure flames of purification, burning the infection of the power of the extraterrestrial mortal world. This was the first time Qin Feng had seen such a situation. There was actually a technique that could restrain the power of the inner demon. Even a part of the true God's law was suppressed, and even the ultimate form of the great millstone of all lives couldn't be formed. At the same time, a desire to explore was born in his heart. Qin Feng had an urgent desire to understand this cultivation system. He could feel that this cultivation system would be of great benefit to his inner demon Tao. Seeing that Xiahou Wang was still struggling fiercely, Qin Feng gave up the idea of using the slaughter seal to kill this person directly. This person's origin was mysterious, and he had the cultivation civilization of the extraterrestrial world. If he could squeeze him dry, he would definitely benefit. Qin Feng made up his mind. He was going to waste it on this person. His mind was connected to the underworld, and the 5 essences and 6 desires evolved from the underworld were continuously attracted to him, turning into a torrent that attacked the bright moon in the center. How vast was the torrent of memories of billions of lives! Xiahou Wang's soul wasn't too strong, nor was it tough. Furthermore, he wasn't a cultivator who had worked hard on the cultivation of his mental state. After 100 attacks, the scriptures that surrounded his soul were finally shattered. Under the guidance of the inner demon, the crimson power turned into 3,000 huge great millstones of all lives. Xiahou Wang's mind was involuntarily dragged into it, experiencing countless attacks of the mortal world. The first world that evolved appeared in front of Qin Feng. It was a huge and strange world. It was a blue planet, with flying iron birds, iron boxes running on the ground, countless reinforced concrete jungles, many legends about gods and devils, as well as advanced modern technology. Qin Feng closed his eyes. With the help of the inner demon's strange ability, Xiahou Wang's soul memories were stolen by him bit by bit. Blue Planet. Transmigrator. Obtained a golden summon divine talisman from the immortal realm called the Great Emperor of Mount Tai. refined essence into qi, refined qi into spirit, refined spirit into void, refined void into Tao. True immortal. So this person obtained the legacy of an extraterrestrial transmigrator after his death. What he cultivated was the true immortal Tao. That strange pearl was his natal magic treasure, the universal mountain river pearl. Chapter 1193. Qin Feng was shocked. Xiao Wang was also an extremely legendary figure. He was a direct descendant of the Xiao royal family in the desolate mountains. He was intelligent since young and displayed extremely high talent. His bloodline was outstanding, and he was the favorite of the mountain country since young. Everything was so perfect. Countless girls adored him. If one were to say that he was unlucky, then he was indeed unlucky. He was envied by his brother, heavily injured and plotted against. He fell into the forbidden area of the Xiao royal family. He was locked in such a place where he would never see the light of day. He suffered loneliness and torture for thousands of years. But he was also lucky. He obtained the legacy of an ancestor of the mountain country in the forbidden area. The ancestor of the mountain country was an outsider, which was the modern Blue Star. It was a modern city. When the outsider was traveling on Mount Tai, he was accidentally hit by the statue of the great emperor of Mount Tai, and came to this primeval land. Together with the East Peak Tai Mountain Great Emperor, there was another inheritance of the East Peak Tai Mountain Great Emperor. The Great Emperor of Mount Tai was an ancient god of the immortal domain, and his name was Jin Hong Shi. He was proficient in both the divine and immortal inheritances, and was an almighty of the primeval times. This could be said to be a great opportunity. The rarest thing was that there was a trace of the broken divine talisman of Mount Tai. The divine talisman was not an ordinary divine talisman, but an innate divine talisman. The innate gods that were born at the beginning of the world all had such innate divine talismans. This innate divine talisman was similar to the innate origin god position. It could be said to be extremely noble. With such a great opportunity, the outsider could be said to be a great fortune, a great source of fortune. But he was also extremely unlucky. Back then, the primeval land was incomplete, and its fate was incomplete. Ordinary people were unable to transcend it. But relying on the inheritance of the great emperor of Mount Tai, he was able to roam freely for a time, and even cultivated the body of an immortal. According to the information that Qin Feng obtained, the body of an immortal was not inferior to a 15th-level expert. Especially the true immortal, which was comparable to a true god. That xenorace visitor was heaven-defying indeed. Under such a barren environment of karmic luck in the primeval lands, he relied on the natural divine talisman that represented the divine position of the Eastern Peak's Grand Emperor, Mount Tai, to actually forcefully cultivate his strength to the true immortal realm. Moreover, he was not an ordinary true immortal. He was a true immortal dual immortal, and his might was overwhelming. His strength far surpassed that of ordinary true immortals. Unfortunately, he was unlucky. When he broke through, he attracted the attention of a chief god almighty. It was the great emperor of the eastern wilderness. And then, there was no more and then. Although the foreign guest was strong, how could he be a match for the great emperor of the eastern wilderness? After his aura was discovered, he died. Just one strike. After one strike, the immortal's body shattered, and so did the immortal's primordial spirit. With the last of his strength, he barely managed to split a portion of his primordial spirit into the forbidden grounds. It gradually dissipated, leaving behind only a ball of memory formed by the power of the primordial spirit. In the end, it was preserved due to the peculiar topography of the forbidden area. In the end, Xiao Wang, who was plotted against by the king of Divine Mountain and secretly imprisoned in the Forbidden Land, benefited from it. But now, Qin Feng had taken advantage of everything. After stealing Xiahou Wang's memories, the inheritance of the great emperor of Mount Tai, Jinhong Shi, would all fall into his hands. The Jinhong clan was an ancient deity of the great wasteland world, and was of noble birth. According to the memories of the Jinhong clan, when the creation god of the great wasteland world, Pangu, passed away, his son was called the Hetian clan. At that time there were 3 sovereigns. The Hetian clan lived on a mountain, which was passed down from generation to generation. Hence, the mountain was named Grandmaster Dai's Mount Tai. The Hetian clan had a son, the former Bo clan. The Bone clan had a second son, the Xuanma clan. The first son was called the Golden Wheel King, and the second son was called the Xiaohai clan. The Xiaohai clan's wife was Mi Luan Fairy. The Mi Luan Fairy swallowed 2 days into her stomach at night. She gave birth to 2 sons, who grew up in the Golden Cicada clan and later became known as Emperor Dong Hua. The second son was called the Emperor of Mount East. The first Emperor of Mount East was a direct descendant of the creation god, and his status was revered. According to Qin Feng's estimation, this was definitely a chief god, and not an ordinary one. Not only was this chief god extremely accomplished in the divine Tao, but he also dabbled in the immortal Tao. He cultivated both the immortal Tao and the divine Tao, and his achievements were great. It was just that the waters of the great wasteland world were too deep, and there were too many ancient existences. For some unknown reason, the Emperor of Mount East had fallen. This legacy changed hands several times, but in the end it benefited Qin Feng. Qin Feng comprehended a lot from the unique systems of the immortal Tao and the divine Tao. Comprehending by analogy was extremely beneficial to the refinement of his divine spirit and even the comprehension of the heaven and earth laws. Qin Feng's gaze locked onto Xiahou Wang, who had fallen into the samsara of life. At this point, all the benefits on Xiahou Wang had been squeezed dry. There was no use for him to stay. Without a sound, the surging torrent of billions of lives tore the immortal's essence spirit apart, turning it into countless pieces. Bang! His primordial spirit shattered, and Xiahou Wang, who was in midair, crashed to the ground. The cosmic mountain river pearl above his head fell. However, before it landed in a palm. Qin Feng's figure flew out from Xiahou Wang's body and caught the bead. The cosmic mountain river pearl was also a connate numinous treasure, an earth elemental numinous treasure. Coupled with some immortal Tao weapon refinement techniques, it was extremely powerful. With a single smash, it had the power of mountains and rivers, and it even called itself a small world. It was an extremely precious treasure. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! At the side, the 3-tailed Scorpion King and Kunlun Empress, who had been anxiously waiting for the result, walked over. Are you all right? Qin Feng glanced at the pale Kunlun Empress. Kunlun Empress looked like she was severely injured. With the self-destruction of the phoenix-tailed Jade Guqin, most of her sound elemental foundation had perished. It would be very difficult for her to become a king. Your Majesty, I'm fine. Kunlun Empress shook her head. She was really lucky to be able to escape with her life from Xiahou Wang's hands. The 3-tailed Scorpion King also had lingering fears. Seeing their expressions, Qin Feng smiled faintly. The 2 of you can be considered to have made a great contribution this time. For this seat to be able to kill Xiahou Wang, the 2 of you have contributed greatly. With that, Qin Feng's gaze landed on Kunlun Empress. Don't worry. I will compensate you for your losses. Kunlun Empress felt slightly better, but she still felt a little sad. Her intrinsic cardinal treasure was destroyed, and her foundation was shaken. What was the point of any compensation? Poison Spirit, I know that you cultivate the Earth origin laws. This treasure is a connate numinous treasure nurtured by the Earth origin laws. I'll give it to you. Qin Feng waved his sleeves, and the mountain and river universe pearl floated out from his hand. For me? The 3-tailed Scorpion King was stunned. He stared at the pearl in the void, and then a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. This was a huge surprise. An Earth-origin connate numinous treasure nurtured by the Earth. He had witnessed the power of this pearl with his own eyes previously. Even a true god would be severely injured after taking a hit from it. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He received the pearl joyfully and couldn't bear to put it down. He looked at it again and again. Qin Feng's gaze landed on Kunlun Empress. With a wave of his sleeves, Xiahou Wang's body on the ground turned into dust. A dazzling divine light from his body landed in Qin Feng's hands. This was a part of the East Peak Mount Tai Thearka's connate divine talisman. It was a part of an incomplete connate origin god position. The connate origin god position of the mountain system was a foreign land. However, as long as it was slightly refined and traced back to its origin, it would definitely be able to nurture a third-grade god position. Qin Feng already had a god position nurtured in his body. Moreover, he wasn't an Earth origin cultivator. He couldn't refine or fuse with this object. His gaze landed on Kunlun Empress, and the ball of golden divine light in his hands entered her body. "Elder Kunlun, after this battle, you self-detonated your intrinsic cardinal treasure, causing your foundation to be shaken. I'll give you this object. I hope you will nurture it well and don't let me down." Qin Feng didn't care about Kunlun Empress, who had closed her eyes and was carefully comprehending the profoundness of the golden light. He turned to the three-tailed Scorpion King and Poison Spirit. "Elder Poison Spirit, I'll leave the matters of the desolate mountain to you and Emperor Songdi. The two of you will lead the quasi-deities to the desolate mountain. You must conquer the desolate mountain within 3 months." "Yes, Your Majesty." Poison Spirit was excited. He had just obtained a treasure. Although he wanted to go into seclusion to refine it, the matters of the desolate mountain couldn't be delayed. Chapter 1194. 9 Nether Sacred City. This giant city built at the foot of the Cloud Ridge was flourishing day by day. Through the Cloud River in front of 9 Nether Sacred City, countless precious resources were transported from the other side of the Cloud River to 9 Nether Sacred City. 9 Nether Sacred City could be said to be changing 3 times in a day. Half a year ago, there was only one city in Cloud Region. But in the past half a year, experts from different tribes had settled down here. Not only were there 7 to 8 satellite cities outside 9 Nether City, but there were also countless cities popping up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Regardless of whether they were from the Demon Clan or the Human Clan, many large tribes in the forest wasteland had moved their tribes over from thousands of miles away. The reason why Cloud Region was changing so quickly was because of one reason. There was only one reason for this. All the experts knew that the King of Hell had the intention of transforming the Cloud Prefecture. Moreover, as Cloud Region became the core of the 9 Nether tribe, it was destined to become an existence similar to the Emperor's capital. With so many experts gathered here, it was a huge whirlpool of benefits. Secondly, it was the changes in the underworld. Now, in the eyes of many experts, even a small spiritual house in Cloud Region was not inferior to a mid-grade temple in another region. In the past half a year, the changes here were too great. Following the rebellion in the mountain country half a year ago, the entire mountain country had fallen into the hands of the 9 Nether tribe. Not only the mountain country, but the vast west wind plains outside of the mountain country had opened up their pockets to the 9 Nether tribe. In short, the essence of the mountain country had gathered. The entire Cloud Region was like the center of the world, especially the Saint Spirit vein in the center, which was constantly absorbing large amounts of spiritual energy. It seemed to have become another center of the immemorial land. There were spiritual houses being born almost every moment. Many spiritual houses were upgraded to temples, or low-grade temples were upgraded to mid-grade temples. It was not rare for mid-grade temples to be upgraded to high-grade temples. Some said that the Saint-grade spirit vein might evolve into a medium-grade Saint spirit vein, a high-grade Saint spirit vein, or even the legendary ancestral spirit vein as the Nine Nether tribe expanded and the underworld grew stronger. How could people not be moved by such an advantage? In half a year, nearly 1 million tribesmen had gathered here. And there were also many tribes that migrated here. The entire Nine Nether tribe was filled with vitality. However, many of the elders in charge of the construction of the city were also very busy. Qin Feng did not pay attention to these trivial matters. After leaving them to Yi Ding, Yuan Yuner, Shi Tong, Shi Han, and the others, he wholeheartedly hid in the god of Hades temple to comprehend the benefits he had obtained from Xiahou Wang. Following the pacification of the desolate mountain, the quasi-deities overseeing the situation, and the opening of the underworld earth, the Nine Netherworld tribe had no enemies for the time being. The West Wind Plains was unusually large. Although there were many tribes on the plains, and some were even occupied by the Demon Clan, there was no need for Qin Feng to take action. Those quasi-deity elders were not to be trifled with. Speaking of enemies, there were definitely some. In the south, there was a huge tribe called the Spirit Emperor tribe. The Spirit Emperor tribe was the overlord of the Spirit Desolate Land in the West Wind Plains. I heard that just like the Ninth Hell tribe, they ruled over more than one wasteland. It had a huge influence in the primordial desolates. It could be said to be the #1 power. However, this had nothing to do with Qin Feng for the time being. The West Wind Plains was vast, and it would take a period of time before they would encounter the first tribe of the Spirit Emperor tribe. However, Qin Feng did not relax because of this. Instead, he frequently dispatched quasi-deity experts to push the progress of the West Wind Plains. Even King Chujiang and King Songdi were not idle. Even Kunlun Empress, who had already stabilized her foundation, was frequently dispatched to push the West Wind Plains. Qin Feng could feel that the primordial land was expanding along with the recovery of the heaven and earth's fate. The bottleneck of many experts above the true God realm had already begun to loosen. The primordial land had already begun to give birth to deity position. Very soon, someone would realize this. Qin Feng had to deal with the Spirit Emperor tribe before anyone realized this. This was the general trend. For half a year, Qin Feng had not only been comprehending the laws of the netherworld in the netherworld earth, but he had also been collecting innate origin energy. Half a year ago, the king of the mountain country had sent people to deliver 1,300 types of innate origin energy. Among them, 500 overlapped, but there were still 800 new types of innate origin energy. In addition to Qin Feng's original 1,500 types of innate origin energy, the total amount of innate origin energy in Scandinavia exceeded 2,300. In half a year, he had benefited from the contribution points system of the Netherworld Board. Qin Feng had collected nearly 600 types of origin energy. The 3,000 types of innate origin energy needed to advance to the primal chaos realm was already gathered. Half a month ago, the primal chaos realm was already being nurtured. After absorbing the 3,000 types of innate origin energy, the space-time dimension in the depths of Scandinavia seemed to have undergone a transformation. It seemed to have extended into countless dimensions, and origin energy was born within the dimensions. Qin Feng's true body entered and took the opportunity to comprehend the profound mysteries of the laws within. Standing in Scandinavia, he felt as if his body was a huge sun. The surrounding stars and all living things were hidden within the many dimensions, becoming extremely distant. It was as if he was naked in front of everyone at first glance. Between the dimensions, an environment like the endless void appeared. Layer upon layer, and in the gaps, a surge of primal chaos energy appeared. It filled the countless dimensions, and even seeped into the spiritual roots of all living things. This surge of primal chaos energy was born from the crystal wall system. After absorbing the 3,000 types of innate origin energy, the crystal wall system was like water flowing through a canal, giving birth to this primal chaos energy. The primal chaos heavenly Tao law manifested in a corporeal form, filled with a supreme radiance that could shake space-time. The primal chaos heavenly Tao law slowly changed. In Qin Feng's eyes, it slowly turned into a blazing white ball of light. This ball of light was extremely gentle. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the white light fused into Scandinavia, and the surrounding scenery in Scandinavia seemed to turn into a boundless white light. Qin Feng closed his eyes, and his divine sense seemed to fuse with the ball of light. The entire Scandinavia seemed to have become extremely huge and vast. This vastness was not due to the expansion of the land, but the expansion of the dimensions. It seems like the power of spacetime has been born. In Qin Feng's original perception, the original spacetime of Scandinavia was incomplete and full of loopholes. It could only be used and breathed together with the spacetime of the outside world. At this moment, Qin Feng felt that he could slightly adjust the ratio of time in Scandinavia to the outside world. This power was extremely powerful. Moreover, using Scandinavia seemed to be able to shake the lines of spacetime dimensions. Like other creator dimensions, he could search for other resource worlds in the gaps of spacetime dimensions and plunder and steal. This was an ability that the original Scandinavia did not possess. Chapter 1195. I guess I've completed the initial advancement of the Overgod nation. Qin Feng smiled faintly as he felt the changes. Although the advancement process was only the beginning of the main God tier, which was the door to the primal chaos tier, the next step was construction. The new Overgod universe was actually very simple and crude in Qin Feng's eyes. Although there was the birth of the mother of all Qi, the connate chaos vital energy, it was still relatively low-level. There were far more than 3,000 types of connate chaos vital energy. No one could say for sure how many types there were in the endless heavens. However, one thing was for sure. The more connate chaos vital energy collected, the faster the Overgod universe would be perfected. Of course, there was a very common way. Plundering a world's origin force. A world's origin force was the foundation of a world. It was more precious than ordinary connate chaos vital energy and connate treasures. Plundering could improve one's own Overgod universe. Of course, the Overgod universe's improvement was not limited to this mode. The first great emperor of the East Mountain, Jin Hongshi, was a powerful Overgod. There were several ways to maintain a divine nation in his legacy. One was to establish a sect under the immortal Tao mode. One would become a sect leader, collect the blessings and fortunes of all living beings, and be worshipped by all living beings. The second was to support a divine dynasty or establish one. This way, one could also collect resources for the Overgod's advancement. However, whether it was establishing a great sect that covered many worlds or establishing a divine dynasty, it was quite difficult. Of course, one could also choose to cultivate, comprehend, travel the endless heavens, and comprehend the myriad Tao. There were also Overgod powerhouses who traveled alone. However, these were not the mainstream. It was not limited to the primeval wilderness or the Linghai continent where the immortal Tao was located. Divine nation transforming stars and divine nation transforming continents were the mainstream. Divine nation transforming stars projected the divine nation into an illusory starlight that hung in the sky and turned into a star. It could continuously receive the nourishment of the star's omnipresent starlight and be nourished by the origin force of the world. Secondly, divine nation transforming continents projected an origin force to become a continent. It could also be nourished by the origin force of the world. However, there were also unconventional methods. For example, using the Overgod's spacetime ability to break through the world's crystal wall and plunder it by force. However, this method would often be hated by the world itself. If the world was strong enough, like the primeval wilderness, where there were many terrifying existences above the over-God level, it could be fatal. This was extremely dangerous, because this kind of plundering was an irreversible damage to the world. As the Chaos God's world ascended to the Lord's spacetime, Qin Feng was left with only two options. He had to make a choice in a short time: Divine Kingdom transforming star, or Divine Kingdom transforming continent. Moreover, he could choose the Spirit Sea continent or the primordial land. There was no need to think too much. Qin Feng had chosen the Divine Kingdom transforming star. As the primordial Star Lord, he had the ability to mobilize the boundless power of starlight above the billions of galaxies. Transforming his divine kingdom into a star naturally had more benefit. As for the location, there was no need to think too much about it. Although the laws of the immemorial land were becoming more and more perfect, it was still not as old as the Spirit Sea continent. Furthermore, the Spirit Sea continent was extremely mysterious and had a huge foundation. With so many benefits, why would Qin Feng give up what was close at hand for what was far away? Actually, the foundation of the ancient lands was not shallow either. Through the power of the Master God's time and space, he could sense that in addition to the continent under his feet, there were 5 other huge continents in the Archean land. Just as Yi Ding had said, this place was divided into 6 continents. The foundation of a world like this should surpass that of an ordinary continent. However, compared to the Spirit Sea continent, it was much inferior. At least, the Spirit Sea continent could give birth to a Master God, but this continent might not be able to give birth to such a super-existence. However, these things could only be done after returning to the Spirit Sea continent. These days, Qin Feng's main focus was to familiarize himself with the various functions of the Master God's time and space. The first was the analysis module. The Master God's ball of light, transformed from the primal chaos heavenly Tao wheel, was formed by the laws of heaven and earth in the Divine Kingdom. It had a special analysis function that could analyze the laws of heaven and earth contained in various treasures or cultivation techniques. For example, the power in Qin Feng's body gave it very clear data. Cultivation. Rank 15 True God. Title: Water-type King, Nether King. Constitution. Special True God Body, Extraterrestrial True Demon Body, Ancestral Dragon Constitution Bloodline. First-generation Ancestral Dragon Bloodline, transformed from Blackwater Mystical Snake Laws. Earth Laws, 20%. Netherworld Laws, 80%. Space Laws, 95%. Water Laws, 8%. Soul Laws, 15%, etc. Qin Feng also saw a few types of laws that were less than 10%, such as fire laws, wind laws, and so on. This meant that Qin Feng had dabbled slightly in these laws. The percentage indicated Qin Feng's level of attainment in the various laws. As for laws, they were born after one's comprehension of laws reached 100%. For example, water laws and soul laws. They were born after one became a water monarch or a supreme true demon, which was also a greater celestial king. This meant that he was a water greater celestial king and soul greater celestial king. As for the netherworld laws reaching 80%, it was purely a side effect of his comprehension of the netherworld laws. As for the space laws, they belonged to rank 14 and were far below laws. This meant that Qin Feng's main cultivation of the space laws was still at rank 14. However, he was just a little bit away from being able to turn the space laws into laws. This meant that his comprehension of the space laws had also improved, and he was finally about to break through to rank 15. As for the rest, there were many columns, such as cultivation techniques, analysis of providence, treasures, and so on. There were even detailed analysis of the various spirit roots, spirit herbs, and spirit ores in the chief god space. This ability was similar to that of the chief butler. This ability was very beneficial to one's comprehension of laws. Especially since Qin Feng was a greater celestial king, this benefit was especially important. The second ability was the deduction of cultivation techniques. This was a derivative of the first ability. It could optimize various cultivation techniques, propose bloodline purification plans, or modify cultivation methods, etc. The third ability was the highlight: space-time teleportation. This ability was very special. It could lock onto the coordinates of endless spacetime and sneak through spacetime. This was an important thing that many chief god spaces relied on to steal resources from various worlds. To be honest, Qin Feng liked this ability the most. He liked the robbers from the chief god spaces from the bottom of his heart. In fact, Qin Feng had relied on robbing in his previous life to rise to power. As a devil, he liked this kind of thrilling plundering and stealing. He did not like to do things step by step. Chapter 1196. Of course, the only thing he could do now was to steal. Although he was the first to upgrade his god kingdom to the over-god space, he was still a true god. To be precise, he was a greater celestial king. Qin Feng was tempted. He had searched the soul of a reincarnator in the over-god space, and was very jealous of the huge profits the over-god space could generate by investing in reincarnators. As for reincarnators, Qin Feng didn't lack them. There were so many experts in the 9th Hell tribe. If Qin Feng wanted to, he could convert most of them into reincarnators. However, Qin Feng didn't have such plans for now. It was very risky for a large number of reincarnators to enter the over-god space without a chief god. There were enemies in the over-god space too. It was easy for some mighty figures to covet it or for other chief gods to become enemies. Once the enemy's reincarnator was captured, it would be easy to track them down. They would be easily targeted. This was very dangerous. While the 9th Hell tribe was attacking the West Wind Plains, Qin Feng was prepared to become a reincarnator. Only by personally experiencing the over-god space's abilities could he formulate better plans to plunder. In the vast white chief god space, looking at the huge white ball of light in front of him, Qin Feng's divine sense seemed to have fused with the huge white ball of light. A supreme power that surpassed the heavens and earth gathered in his mind. Space-time targeting. Node search. Some world nodes appeared in the white ball of light. Most of these nodes were related to Qin Feng. One of them was the Spirit Sea Continent node. Qin Feng could return to the Spirit Sea Continent at any time. The other 5 continents of the primordial lands. However, according to the analysis of the over-god space's heavenly Tao, which was the white ball of light, returning to the Spirit Sea Continent or entering the other 5 continents was not enough to maximize the benefits. Secondly, there were some unfamiliar space-time coordinates. These space-time coordinates were extremely far away. They could be traced back to the East Sea Supreme Lord that Qin Feng killed. They were the worlds that the reincarnator had visited. These worlds were all resources of the limestone overgod space. Since he had already offended the limestone overgod, Qin Feng didn't mind seizing these resource worlds that belonged to the limestone overgod space. However, he couldn't go there now. Once the limestone chief god found out that he had left the Spirit Sea Continent, he definitely wouldn't let go of this excellent opportunity to kill him. Soon, another cluster of strange nodes appeared in the white ball of light. The nodes were like planets. Most of them were gray, but some of them were colored. Gray represented a world that could not be harvested for the time being, or a world whose crystal walls could not be penetrated by the creator space. This seems to be the space-time node coordinates of some extraterrestrial transmigrator. Qin Feng had a strange expression on his face. Among them, there were many gray worlds, which looked like a sumptuous feast, and some of them were colored. Qin Feng sensed slightly and eliminated some low-level worlds of low value. Those low-level worlds were mostly wuxiao worlds or technological world. Their world origin force was thin and there was not much value in harvesting them. Moments later, Qin Feng locked onto a huge node that was emitting white light. Qin Feng immediately activated the Creator Space's ability to break through spacetime for the first time after he created a mental demon clone to oversee the Nine Hells tribe. Yuhang, Qiantang County. On a small hill, a black-robed young man frowned as he looked at the Jinshan temple not far away. He was mumbling to himself, "This is the first time. What a scam. Breaking through this world's crystal wall actually consumed so much of the Creator Space's origin force. I'm afraid the Creator Space won't be able to teleport again without a year or two. The cost of transmigrating with my real body is too high." This person was none other than the Nine Hells King Qin Feng, who had sneaked into the extraterrestrial for the first time. Qin Feng faintly felt that his power was suppressed by a great deal, which made him very uncomfortable and not used to it. Whether it was the Spirit Sea or the Primordial Lands, the amount of Spirit Chi here was much less than the Spirit Sea. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably be very uncomfortable and would not be able to unleash 50% of their power in a short period of time. However, it was nothing to Qin Feng. He had experienced the age of Dharma decline. In the age of Dharma decline, he was still able to obtain nourishment even when his origin force was almost depleted. Such a situation was nothing to him. However, he could not unleash the power of his main body to the 12th level for the time being. Once he used his main body's power frequently, it would arouse the vigilance of this world and even cause the heavenly secrets to descend and attract the powerful beings of this world to besiege him. That would not be good. Qin Feng looked around. Dong. In the evening, the Jinshan temple's bell rang. It must be the time for the monks' evening classes. Qin Feng's figure flashed and flew down the hill. He entered Qiantang County through a small path on the side of the hill. For Qin Feng, what he needed to do now was to understand this world and the cultivation rules here. The most important thing was to figure out which world this was. There were several ways to conquer a world and steal the origin force of a world. The most common way was to change the world's so-called heavenly secrets. By reversing the heavenly secrets and creating a loophole, the Creator Space would naturally be able to take advantage of it and reap the benefits. The second way was to use one's own power to completely reverse the world's trend. For example, in a Xianxiao world, one could turn it into a world of martial arts. Once done, one could even completely take over this world. It would become a subsidiary world under the Creator Space. However, Qin Feng did not have such thoughts for the time being. In the past 2 days, he gradually understood this world. This world was not the green snake, but the legend of the white snake. The reason was simple. According to the inheritance of the visitor from outside Qin Feng's mind, in the green snake, Su Xian was a scholar who taught. The Su Xian of this world had never taught before. He was only an apprentice of Qingyu Hall. Qingyu Hall was a medicine shop. After confirming that world, it was much easier to steal the origin force of that world. Of course, the most important thing was that Qin Feng understood the heavenly secrets through the inheritance of the visitor from outside. Now that he knew the heavenly secrets, it was not difficult to change it. However, the legend of the white snake was not shallow. Powerful beings like the South Pole Immortal and the Guan Yin Bodhisattva had appeared here. Their dojos had shown their holiness in the human world. Without a doubt, these two ancient beings were definitely existences of level 16 and above. Although they might not be their true bodies, once their traces were discovered, it would probably attract the attention of their true bodies and even the forces behind them. That would be too dangerous for Qin Feng. How powerful were Buddhism and Taoism? Even if the great emperor of the eastern wilderness came, he would probably be defeated. Qin Feng made up his mind that unless it was absolutely necessary, he would definitely not use his true body's power. However, he already had a plan on how to change the heavenly secrets. Chapter 1197. Qin Feng first spent a large sum of money to buy a huge mansion in the center of Qiantang County. To do a good job, one must first sharpen his tools. Of course, the money didn't appear out of nowhere. This world was monitored by the divine Tao. There were city gods in the city, earth god on the land, Hebo in the water, and even door gods in front of rich families. One could see how secure this place was. It was impenetrable. Money was related to the god of wealth's residence in the heavenly court. If a large sum of money was created randomly, it would be easy for the heavenly court to get hold of it. Since he couldn't turn stone into gold or use illegal means to steal it, that wasn't a problem for Qin Feng. There were treasures hidden underground. It wasn't difficult for him to find a noble's tomb with his divine will. Furthermore, he could casually find some treasures left underground and sell them on the black market for a large sum of money. Getting rich and whatnot was really too easy. The mansion was located in the center of Qiantang County. It wasn't something an ordinary person could afford. Naturally, it attracted a lot of attention in Qiantang County. Many rich and powerful families came to visit. Even the county magistrate of Qiantang County personally sent someone to invite them. After paying a few thousand taels of silver, Minister Qin's Qin Manor was integrated into the circle of rich and powerful families in Qiantang County. This was big news in the small Qiantang County. Of course, the most praiseworthy thing was Qin Manor's young Master Qin's reputation for being charitable. This young Master Qin would set up a porridge stall at the city gate almost every month to help the refugees. Speaking of this young Master Qin, the lower-class citizens of Qiantang County all gave him a thumbs up. In the past few days, the Qin family's winery had opened for business and started recruiting workers. The benefits were excellent, and many people were looking forward to it. Being able to have the Qin Manor was something that many people could only wish for. However, they didn't know that Qin Feng wasn't really doing this because he had nothing to do, but because he wanted to integrate into this world. Although he had the power of the creator space to hide his strange aura, it was still very easy for him to be exposed. However, if he could obtain the merit of this world and refine the merit aura, even the avatars of the creator gods wouldn't be able to detect his abnormality. All of this was presided over by one of Qin Feng's inner demons. His main body was in the depths of the mansion, comprehending the mysteries of the immortal Tao. The great emperor of the eastern peak, Jin Hongxi, was a peerless almighty who cultivated both immortal and divine. He was one of the 3,000 mighty figures of the immortal Tao that he had heard about in the Purple Cloud Palace. There were many immortal Tao cultivation techniques in his mind, and most of them were top-notch. After choosing, Qin Feng chose the Purple Heaven's Golden Summit Great Void Immortal Sutra. The reason why he chose this technique was because this technique was the most orthodox. It was passed down from the same lineage as the Tao ancestors' yellow quartz scripture. It was the orthodox path of the celestial sect of wonders. The immortal Tao focused on refining essence into qi, refining qi into spirit, refining spirit into void, and refining void into Tao. With the Taiji 5 elements, the 8 trigrams, the 9 palaces, and the celestial phenomenon as the principles, and the heaven and earth's vital qi as the foundation, he cultivated countless techniques. Riding on the clouds, disappearing from afar. In simple terms, the stages were embryonic movement, orifice initiation, sensing, fiendish condensation, energy refining, golden core, Tao foundation, Yin spirit, nurturing, and finally the immortal Tao primordial spirit. Cultivating the primordial spirit meant that one had entered the immortal Tao. To a certain extent, one could be considered an almighty in the world, becoming an immortal. However, one could not be considered a true immortal, only an earth immortal. An earth immortal would plant a blessed land, nurture good karma, plant a golden lotus in fire, gather the 3 flowers above one's head, and raise the 5 qis into the sky. Qin Feng was a peerless almighty who was not inferior to a true immortal in the divine Tao realm. Mastering one technique, mastering all techniques. Cultivating the purple heaven's golden summit great void immortal scripture was a piece of cake. Moreover, this technique itself led to the great Tao of space. The end point was to merge with the Tao of space and become a golden immortal Tao ancestor, which was also the space over God realm. The two had many similarities. However, to be cautious, Qin Feng still used the power of the big light ball. In other words, the power of the over-God space analyzed the entire immortal scripture. After confirming that there were no problems, he began to cultivate. This kind of cultivation was not difficult for Qin Feng at all. On the first day, he broke through the embryonic movement, orifice initiation, sensing, fiendish condensation, and energy refining realms in one go. Tao embryo realm, sensing the pure Xiantian qi in the body. Orifice initiation, opening up specific acupoints in the body. Connecting all the acupoints together, refining all the acupoints in the body. Sensing, turning the Xiantian qi in the body into purple heaven's dermic power, refining and purifying it. At this realm, some small dermic spells and divine abilities would be born. The purple heaven's great void immortal scripture would give birth to some illusionary divine abilities. Fiendish condensation and energy refining, these two steps required one to collect fiendish earth chi from underground caves, as well as heavenly energy above the sky to collect heavenly energy and fiendish earth chi into one, allowing the dermic power to be both hard and soft. Fiendish condensation and energy refining, according to the different techniques, required different fiendish earth chi and heavenly energy. For water-type dermic power, one could only collect water-type fiendish earth chi and heavenly energy. For metal-type dermic power, one needed metal-type fiendish earth chi and heavenly energy. For ordinary people, even disciples of famous sects, this would require a lot of time and effort. To Qin Feng, this wasn't a problem at all. His divine force was originally pure to the extreme, able to merge into one. On the evening of the first day, in the inner residence of Qin Manor, a huge wave of spiritual qi rippled out, but it was suppressed in an instant. A moment later, an immortal Tao golden core was born in Qin Feng's body. It was round, golden, and had an extremely strong spirituality. Qin Feng's spirit entered it, and it seemed to be constantly nourishing it. The immortal Tao had a unique and meticulous way of cultivating the spirit. Cultivation was about finding flaws and mending them, constantly perfecting oneself. Cultivating the immortal Tao was a brand new experience for Qin Feng. In this kind of cultivation, he could discover some problems in his body, and contribute to his breakthrough to become a lord. It was a practical foundation. After the golden core, it was the Tao foundation, Yin spirit and nurturing. The Tao foundation was the fusion of the soul and the golden core, and the foundation of the primordial spirit. After that, it would turn into the Yin spirit, and the Yin spirit would nurture immortal qi, which was the nurturing of the qi refinement realm's level 9. At the nurturing realm, the Yin spirit would have already nurtured immortal qi. Fusing with the immortal qi, it would nourish the Yin spirit until it became more resilient. As everyone knew, there was a gap between the 9th level of the qi refinement realm and the primordial spirit realm. Between the two, one was the earth, the other the sky. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. Once they broke through, they would break free from the shackles of heaven and earth, and turn from a mortal to an immortal. Cultivators at the 9th level of the qi refinement realm were also called half-immortals. What flowed in their bodies was no longer spiritual power, but immortal power. However, to truly transform from half-immortals to immortals and cultivate the primordial spirit earth immortal body, they still had to break through another level of the gate of heaven and earth. Qin Feng was in a strategic position. In just half a month, he had cultivated from the first level of the Qi refinement realm to the 9th level of the Qi refinement realm. In the manner, he sat cross-legged on a futon, and the immortal Qi in his body transformed. He was like an ethereal immortal, extremely agile. His every move was surrounded by a purple aura. Behind him, a beam of immortal light appeared, as if it was shooting into the clouds. That was the purple heaven's golden peak, immortal light, that he cultivated from the purple heaven's golden peak, immortal scripture. Its power was indescribable. Once he cultivated the primordial spirit, he would gather the 5 Qi and 3 flowers, and form a Tao fruit auspicious cloud. It was mysterious and unpredictable, and had the power of the Creator's space. Chapter 1198. After cultivating to Qi refinement realm level 9, even Qin Feng, who was already comparable to a perfected immortal, would find it difficult to break through to the essence soul realm in a short period of time. Within his body, in his sea of consciousness, the water-type origin divinity was shining under the sun. Immortal Qi was dense and purple. Faint purple immortal Qi was being nurtured by the immortal energy in his body. Like the spring rain, it strengthened his Yin spirit. In terms of close combat ability, martial experts were undoubtedly more perverted. But in terms of control of minute details, the immortal Tao was clearly superior. Clearly, he was now a dual cultivator of martial arts and spells. Immortal energy and divine energy went hand in hand. Luckily, the divine energy of the mixed essence star was all-inclusive and did not fear conflict. On the contrary, it could merge and transform. Qin Feng opened his eyes as he heard the sound of footsteps. A figure dressed like a young master walked over and bowed slightly to him. After a while, it turned into a black gas and entered his body. This was one of his mental demon clones. For the past few months, it had been this mental demon clones that had been presiding over the mortal world. He stood up slightly. Immortal Qi, as bright as the moon, spread out, and the surrounding dust was swept out of the courtyard. In the courtyard, summer had passed, and autumn had arrived. In the courtyard, many flowers had withered. The yellow wind blew and the leaves fell endlessly. 3 months had passed, and the chief god space had recovered. If possible, he could return to the primordial land at any time. Being able to attack and defend, Qin Feng was much more confident. At least, he was less afraid of those powerful people at the chief god level and above. The general trend of this world, which is the plot, should have started. Bai Suzhen is about to go down the mountain to settle the karma with Su Xian from 1,000 years ago. Only then can she focus on breaking through to the essence soul realm. At this time, through the information that the clone had, Qin Feng already knew that little Qing had entered King Chao's residence. King Chou. This was a prince of the Song dynasty during the Shaoxing period of the Song dynasty. It was said that he intended to rebel, and then there was no more. He was killed by the son of the Zhao family, and his whole family was wiped out. At first, there were quite a number of wealthy merchants who took a fancy to King Chou's mansion. However, after a few of them heard the cries of malicious spirits in the middle of the night, a few of them went crazy, and no one else had any ideas about King Chou's mansion. That place was also abandoned. It had become the habitat of many elves. When Bai Suzhen entered the arena, she met Green Snake here. This was a turning point in his fate. White Snake and Su Xian are the main characters in this general trend. I can't take the initiative to influence them. Otherwise, I'll be easily caught. Although Green Snake is also a key existence in this general trend, he's not the main character after all. I can test him. Let's go take a look. With a change of heart, Qin Feng's figure flashed and disappeared from the mansion. King Chou's residence was, in fact, a ruin. Within the city walls, especially at night, there were many people. From the size of the mansion, one could roughly see how magnificent it was when he was at his peak. Silently, Qin Feng was on the heavenly street. King Chiu's residence. Looking at a signboard covered with cobwebs and dust on the ground, Qin Feng shook his head slightly. His figure flashed, and like a phantom, he entered King Chiu's residence. Qin Feng frowned as he scanned the place with his divine thought. He doesn't seem to be here. He looked around and shook his head slightly. Just as he was about to leave, his expression changed and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He stretched out a hand and waved his sleeve. Buzz, buzz. A jade pendant emitting emerald spiritual light broke out from the ground. It was a jade pendant with dragon patterns and was considered a treasure. The quality was not bad, but it was just not bad. Compared to cultivators, although it had spiritual energy, it was of little value. A faint smile flashed across Qin Feng's eyes. A trace of ancestral dragon qi escaped from his body and wrapped a part of the inheritance of the chaotic sacred dragon portrait into the jade pendant. Roar. Containing a trace of ancestral dragon purple qi, the dragon pattern in the jade pendant seemed to come alive. It was like a flying dragon in the sky, lifelike, and had a great majesty. With a finger, the emerald jade pendant with dragon patterns quietly sank into the ground, untouched. His figure flashed and he disappeared on the spot. Not long after, a gloomy and cold wind appeared. The next moment, 6 figures appeared on the spot. Miss Qing, this is your temporary residence? Why is it so shabby? Don't talk nonsense. We just escaped from the netherworld. It's good enough that we have a place to stay. If we are caught by the city god or the earth god, we'll be in trouble. Yes, yes. The 5 ghost figures spoke one after another. The leader, the green-robed young master, glanced at the 5 ghost figures who were talking animatedly. The 5 ghost figures had just teased the night watchman on the street, and she had casually taught them a lesson when she bumped into them. She did not expect the 5 ghost figures to stick to her and insist on being her hired thugs. However, the 5 ghost figures did not have any evil aura. Although their souls were strong, they were gifted. If they were let go, it would be fine if the righteous Taoists caught them. If they were caught by the unorthodox Taoists, the outcome would be unpredictable. What are you arguing about? The leader of the ghosts spoke, and the remaining 4 ghosts immediately quieted down. The leader of the ghosts had a medium build. He looked slightly plump and was dressed like a servant of a rich family. He looked abnormally honest. His eyes swept across the Chou manor. Bai Fu, what did you find? The green-robed young master could not help but be curious when he saw the expression of the leader of the ghosts. Miss Qing, you know that we are 5 elements spirit ghosts. Our birth characters are born from the 5 elements. However, you do not know that we each have unique abilities. Especially when it comes to finding treasures, we are very accurate. Bai Fu frowned and swept his gaze across the ruins. After entering this mansion, my innate talent sensed that there are treasures in this mansion. Treasures! The green-robed handsome young master's eyes lit up. As Bai Fu spoke, his gaze swept and landed on a ruin in the manor. His figure flashed and disappeared into it. In the next moment, he flew out like a wisp of smoke. When he appeared again, there was a jade pendant in his hand. Miss Qing, this is the treasure. Bai Fu respectfully handed over the jade pendant. After receiving the jade pendant and sensing it slightly, the green-robed young master was slightly stunned. She felt an extremely dense majesty from the jade pendant, as if it was suppressing her bloodline. Although the green-robed young master was an ordinary green snake in the wilderness, she had cultivated for 500 years and was not considered shallow. Dragon Qi, and it was extremely pure ancient dragon Qi. She took a deep breath and her eyes were extremely bright. Since ancient times, after the demon race weakened, many of the mountain spirits' legacies were almost cut off. Other than those descendants of demon gods with abnormally high bloodlines, most of the other species could only turn to Taoism or Buddhism to have a way out. She had originally come to Hangzhou in hopes of trying her luck. An opportunity to attain the Tao. The green-robed girl suppressed the excitement in her heart and her gaze landed on the jade pendant. As long as she absorbed the pure dragon chi in the jade pendant, not to mention transforming into a true dragon, even a flood dragon would have a great increase in cultivation and strength, not weaker than those 1,000-year-old demons. If she could go one step further and transform into an azure dragon, the green-robed girl's heart pounded. Some people say that we have to explode on the first day of the month. Cough cough, this is too damaging to our vitality. Let's protect our capital first. If there's a chance, we'll explode again. The body is the most important. Chapter 1199. In a sacred realm in the South Sea. In the rocky valley there was a spring, a lush green forest, and soft fragrant grass spread across the ground. A bodhisattva was sitting on a diamond gem. This was the South Sea's Locket Mountain. In the depths of the purple bamboo forest, spring water gurgled. Suddenly, the bodhisattva, who was meditating on the praying mat, had a slight change in expression. She raised her head and looked in the direction of the central plains. There are changes in the central plains. There seems to be some changes in the heavenly secrets. The bodhisattva's expression was solemn. At this critical juncture, she had no choice but to keep a close eye on it. After 10 lifetimes of cultivation, Fahai was about to complete his merit in this lifetime. The future Fahai Thunder Rulai of the Western Pure Land must not have any problems at this juncture. For Buddhist cultivators, they were not limited to arhats, bodhisattvas, or Buddhas. There were only a few ways to cultivate. They could meditate and comprehend Buddhist principles or swim across the heavens like ascetic monk. However, those were not the main methods of Buddhism at the moment. For bodhisattvas and Buddhas, the accumulation of merit and providence was the foundation. As long as there was enough merit, some people might be able to reach the heavens in a single step. In the Western Pure Land of Buddhism, many Buddhist mighty figures cultivated for many lifetimes and reached the heavens in a single step to become bodhisattvas and Buddhas. The bodhisattvas of Buddhism liked to incarnate into the mortal world. Most of them originated from that. And extraditing a future Buddha was a great merit. Before Fahai's 10th lifetime, Guanyin Bodhisattva had already discovered that this person had deep roots in wisdom and destiny. Naturally, she went with the flow and nurtured him. Fahai did not disappoint her indeed. 10 lifetimes of reincarnation and 10 lifetimes of Buddhism. It could be said that he was an accomplished monk in every lifetime who cultivated the Buddhist Dharma. In this lifetime, as long as she severed her grudges, she could succeed in one fell swoop. She would ascend to the Western Pure Land and become another important Buddha there. Once the Buddha returned, the providence of Buddhism would increase. As Guanyin Bodhisattva, she would naturally be able to receive a portion of the providence of Buddhism. It would be natural for her to advance further. As for the white snake, it was already within her calculations. The white snake stealing the golden core, refined by Fahai 1,000 years ago, naturally could not escape her eyes. If not for that, Fahai might have attained the Arhat realm a few lifetimes ago and ascended to the Spirit Mountain. The karma between the two was extremely deep. The karma had to be settled before the two could attain the Tao. However, this karma was too great. If they wanted to undo it, they would have to fight to the death. However, the Bodhisattva was also interested in the white snake. The white snake was an innate spiritual snake, an innate spiritual species. It was born with great potential and was a follower of the Bodhisattva. Once it succeeded in its cultivation, it would be at least a Bodhisattva. This was also a huge amount of luck. Furthermore, the Bodhisattva had foreseen that the white snake's luck was extraordinary. Her future son would be the celestial Lord of Heaven. This was a great deal. Such an opportunity was hard to come by. However, the two of them had the karma of attaining the Tao, and they would fight to the death. Bodhisattva painstakingly calculated, and finally found a way. As long as Fahai managed to suppress the white snake for 18 years and nurture it with Dharma day and night, it would naturally be able to resolve the grudge between the two of them from 1,000 years ago. At that time, not only would she be able to guide a future Buddha, but she would also be able to enlighten a Bodhisattva and a Lord of Stars. It could be said that she was killing two birds with one stone. After 1,000 years of planning, this plan had become a foregone conclusion. The general trend. How could this Bodhisattva not be anxious about the changes in the heavenly design? However, after several calculations, he still couldn't make any headway. There are no traces at all. Could it be that the mighty figures of the Taoism intervened? The Bodhisattva's face was solemn. In recent years, Dharma had spread to the east and Buddhism had flourished. However, the Taoism was still not to be underestimated. Those golden immortals were not to be trifled with. Although the Bodhisattva was the leader of the Buddhist sect and was vaguely known as the #1 Bodhisattva of the Buddhist sect, she was not without enemies. No matter what, this matter must be investigated thoroughly. I must not let anyone spoil the overall situation. With a change of heart, she turned into a beam of light and disappeared from Locket Mountain, heading towards the Central Plains. Mount Zhongnan Pure Yang Sect. The Pure Yang Sect was one of the 9 major sects of the Taoism. Rumor had it that it was the dojo of a mighty figure of the Pure Yang Sword Immortal, Lu Dongbin, one of the 8 immortals of the Upper Cave. At this moment, in a Taoist temple in the dojo, a white-robed swordsman who was practicing his sword suddenly stopped and glanced in the direction of the South Sea. The heavenly design has changed. Interesting. He put away the 3-foot-long sword in his hand and fell into deep thought. I originally thought that it was unnecessary for me to be sent down here, and that there would be unexpected changes. This is an opportunity. The battle for the great Tao must not be taken half a step back. Most people might not know the origins of perfected Pure Yang Lu Dongbin. He was born from a wisp of connate Pure Yang Qi in the primordial era. He was the first connate light, and his predecessor was Emperor Dong Hua. He was the direct descendant of creation god Pangu Shaohai. He was the wife of Shaohai Milun Fairy. Milun Fairy swallowed 2 days in a dream. She was alert and full of vigor. She gave birth to 2 sons. She returned to the Golden Cicada clan and was later known as Emperor Dong Hua. Her second son, Jin Hong, was later known as Emperor Dong Yu. Emperor Dong Hua was also one of the 3,000 hearers of the Purple Cloud Palace's Tao ancestor. He was also a peerless mighty figure of the immortal Tao mystic sect. However, he met with a calamity in ancient times and perished in the overseas Purple Mansion state. He was guided by the Taiching sect's sect master, Taishang Laojun, and cultivated for many generations before returning to the immortal Tao. Emperor Dong Hua was the first connate light, so he naturally walked the great Tao of light. He was a mighty figure of the Tao of light. Even though he returned, his foundation did not change. However, perfected Pure Yang Lu Dongbin was not the only mighty figure of the Tao of light. There were many other competitors, and the strongest among them was this Guanyin Bodhisattva of Buddhism. Guanyin had many titles in Buddhism, and one of them was Righteous Dharma Ming Tathagata. Guanyin Bodhisattva was an ancient Buddha of the past. She had attained enlightenment before the immeasurable tribulation, and was known as Righteous Dharma Ming Tathagata. Many Buddhist scriptures believed that Guanyin Bodhisattva's early debut was beyond the reach of many Buddhas in the world. Righteous Dharma Ming Tathagata was compassionate and merciful. In order to save all living beings from the sea of suffering, she took a benevolent voyage and became immortal. She walked the Bodhi Tao and saved all living beings. In the Guanyin Samadhi Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha said, "Guanyin became a Buddha before me, and her name was Righteous Dharma Ming Tathagata. I am an ascetic disciple." In the Tao of Light, this Bodhisattva was also close to attaining Tao. However, The Tao of Light could only support one Khanate Tao ancestor. The battle for the great Tao was endless. At this moment, no opportunity could be missed. Guanyin Bodhisattva's arrangements in this world to assist Fahai Lane Tathagata in attaining Buddhahood were extremely secretive, but perfected Pure Yang was aware of it. However, this matter had already become a foregone conclusion. It could be said that the general trend was already set, and there was no way he could interfere. Now that there was a change, he was surprised and could not help but be tempted. Yuhang, Qiantang County, Qin Manor. After sending out a stream of dragon qi, Qin Feng did not do anything else. Instead, he stayed in Qin Manor and practiced the purple firmament golden apex great void immortal light. He was gradually reaching the threshold of the gate of heaven and earth, and the essence soul immortal realm was close at hand. Chapter 1200. A golden immortal Tao ancestor was, in fact, a level 16 Lord God from another world. However, that was just the immortal Tao realm, a level 16 title. The Lord God realm was also divided into different levels. Golden immortal Tao ancestors were also divided into different levels. Khanate Tao ancestors were undoubtedly one of the highest levels in the Tao ancestor realm. However, the golden immortal Tao ancestor realm was still far from Qin Feng's level. At this moment, he was about to break through to the primordial spirit realm. The purple heaven's golden apex great void immortal scripture was the same as the Kongming creation incantation. They were both supreme cultivation techniques that cultivated the Tao of space. However, the two cultivation techniques originated from different perspectives. One was an immortal Tao cultivation technique, while the other was a martial Tao cultivation technique. However, they both led to the same destination. Using the analytical power of the creator space, Qin Feng deduced many things from one case and comprehended the purple heaven's golden summit great void immortal sutra. The immortal light above his head shot straight into the clouds. All the fairies and cultivators within 1,000 miles of Qiantang County looked towards the direction of Qiantang County. They saw thick purple gas all over Qiantang County. Someone has broken through. King Qiu's residence. Two figures were looking at Qin Manor not far away. One was green and the other was white. The green-clothed figure was charming and cute, while the white-clothed figure was elegant and gentle. Sensing the thick immortal light in Qin Manor, the two women were envious. Especially the white-clothed woman. She had cultivated for 1,000 years and experienced countless tribulations, all for the primordial spirit earth immortal position. What thick immortal qi! What a powerful primordial spirit! In the Golden Mountain Temple, a young monk looked towards Qiantang County across the river. His eyes were filled with doubt. He had never heard of any Taoist mighty figure overseeing Qiantang County. Such strong immortal qi and the orthodox aura of Taoism revealed that he was definitely not an ordinary itinerant cultivator. At this moment, all the cultivators were looking in the direction of Qiantang County. Qin Manor. Qin Feng's breakthrough had also reached a critical juncture. The creator space operated, and many changes to the purple heaven's golden summit great void immortal sutra entered the Yin spirit's mind. The various changes made his Yin spirit's mind's mind, shining brightly. It was as if the world was bright. The gate of heaven and earth was no longer blurry, but abnormally clear. However, at this moment a restraining force was born in the heavens and earth. It was as if the heavens and earth wanted to stop him from attaining the immortal soul. There were also many karmic entanglements that came from the heavens and earth, preventing him from flying out of the gate of heaven and earth. The power of karma is indeed terrifying. No wonder White Snake and Fahai were shackled to their original spots and couldn't move. But I'm different. I've just arrived in this realm. Although I have karma, it's all good karma. How can it shackle me? His Yin spirit changed and a layer of divine light flew out. The power that was shackling his Yin spirit melted away silently and turned into a layer of formless Xian Huang Qi that fused with his Yin spirit. It made his Yin spirit even clearer and brighter. Taking advantage of this critical moment, Qin Feng did not care about the confinement force of the myriad heavens and realms, nor did he think about anything else. He converted all the primordial divine power in his body into primordial immortal qi and mixed it with the extremely condensed purple heaven immortal qi that he had originally cultivated. The two merged into one and rushed toward the gate of heaven and earth. His entire Yin spirit transformed into a purple meteor, breaking through the invisible door between heaven and earth. Boom! Qin Feng felt a sudden loud noise, as if he had broken through the heavens. The memories of his entire life in his Yin spirit flowed out. His previous life in the age of Dharma and his current primordial spirit Deshang's memories all surfaced. This was the vision of the primordial spirit realm and the insight of 3 lives, no matter how big or small it was. However, Qin Feng felt that the abhijna of the spatial laws that he had cultivated were all Deshang in one breath. The 6 harmonies scripture technique was Deshang in an instant. The Kongming creation art, the number 1 spatial law, Deshang. The power of the spatial laws was directly raised from the 14th level to the 15th level. The various spatial abhijnas could be said to have merged into one. When his primordial spirit was formed, the white clouds in the sky above Qin Manor seemed to have been washed up. Many elves and cultivators could only see the purple aura from Qin Manor rushing into the heavens. It was mighty and indescribably forceful. What a strong foundation! He's almost at the peak of the primordial spirit earth immortal realm the moment he broke through. He's only one step away from becoming a perfected immortal. In Jinshan Temple, a few old monks were frowning. He really had the bearing of a perfected immortal. Taoism had produced another mighty figure. This Taoism was indeed an old and powerful force. It had outstanding talents in every generation. What a powerful figure! He's just broken through and his purple aura is already so strong. The aura of an immortal is even stronger than that of an ordinary primordial spirit earth immortal. In King Qiu's manor, White Snake also sighed. She was not an ignorant person. She had cultivated on Mount Qingqing for thousands of years and had seen many immortals of the Qingqing Palace. She had even received some of the teachings of Guhong, the immortal Luofu. An ordinary primordial spirit earth immortal's breakthrough would not be so terrifying. Little Qing, don't be reckless in Qiantang County in the future. If you anger this immortal, even I can't protect you. Sister, don't worry. I know. At this moment, many demons and elves within a 10,000-mile radius were also restraining their lesser demons. Qiantang County originally had a powerful monk, Fa Hai. Now that there was another primordial spirit earth immortal, that place could be said to be an immortal's training ground. In Taoism, many sects and itinerant cultivators were already preparing to pay a visit. Having an earth immortal of Taoism's lineage beside them was a great opportunity. Even if they were in an immortal's training ground, they would still benefit immensely from just a few words. In the sky, a streak of purple aura rushed into the galaxy. The surrounding purple heaven immortal qi turned into a purple mist, and huge purple stars circled around him. His immortal qi was simply too majestic. It could even cover half of the galaxy. If one's cultivation was Deshang, they could even turn the purple aura space into reality, turning it into a huge world like the Linghai continent, the primordial land, and the White Snake world. It was similar to the creator space. Once one reached the primordial spirit earth immortal realm, they were only one step away from becoming a true immortal. What was left was to build a blessed land, plant golden lotuses in the fire, and finally grow the 5 qi and 3 flowers from the golden lotuses. That was the Tao of a true immortal. A true immortal was equivalent to a true god. Primordial spirit earth immortal was equivalent to a demigod. However, the significance of attaining the primordial spirit to Qin Feng was not as simple as breaking through to the immortal realm. This meant that he could leave a mark in the White Snake world, and he could come back to steal the world origin force of this world at any time. Just like harvesting leeks, he could harvest them again and again, as long as his identity was not exposed. After becoming an earth immortal, it's time to build a blessed land. Qin Feng moved slightly, and his primordial spirit refined the heaven-revolving purple aura. The dense purple heaven immortal qi breathed in and out for his primordial spirit. Gradually, a faint purple domain spouted out from his primordial spirit. It was close to a 1,000-mile radius. This was extremely terrifying. Ordinary Earth immortals could only break through a dozen or so miles, but he was close to 1,000 miles, almost 100 times. Chapter 1201. 1,000 miles was still not the limit. Qin Feng secretly injected a trace of the original source of the creator space, and the 1,000 miles of welfare expanded again. It also absorbed the purple heaven immortal qi and started to materialize. When a blessed land materialized, it would become a celestial abode. Only a perfected immortal could possess a celestial abode. An ordinary earth immortal of the primordial soul stage would need hundreds of years of accumulation to complete this step, even if they were gifted. But to Qin Feng, this step was too easy. The intrinsic quality of the creator space was far superior to the celestial abode. A trace of resources from the creator space was comparable to a perfected immortal's 1,000 years of accumulation. When the earth immortal's blessed land materialized, it started to absorb the starlight from the stars and gradually solidified. Rumble! It was burning with the color of the stars. Qin Feng looked at this scene calmly. His primordial soul connected with the creator space and numerous spiritual roots, spiritual ores, and connate vital qi flowed into the newly born celestial abode to help it. Each of these spiritual roots would be extremely precious if placed in the world of White Snake. However, with the primordial lands as his backing, what Qin Feng lacked the least was the spiritual roots and the Xiantian origin qi. The earth immortal's blessed land started to sink. As many spiritual roots entered, a white dot seemed to have sunk in. The next moment it turned into a vortex and absorbed the starlight from the stars. The starlight is moving. Someone is condensing a celestial abode? At this moment, many earth immortals in the famous mountains and rivers of the world were shocked. All of them looked up at the sky. A thick purple qi was in the sky like a star. The stars in the sky were gathered in the purple qi. This was really the phenomenon of a celestial abode. Which sect is it from? I can't believe it has reached this step. Could it be the origin sealed Taoist from the Kunlun sect's Jade Palace has broken through? The origin seal Taoist has been an earth immortal of the primordial soul stage for more than 1,300 years. His cultivation is indeed profound. But what he cultivates is the Jade Clear Golden Court Immortal Sutra from the Kunlun sect's Jade Palace. Even if he has attained Tao, there shouldn't be such a phenomenon. I think it's most likely earth immortal Xianling from the Little Frost Mountain. He obtained the legacy of the ancient true immortal, the Purple Cloud Immortal, the Purple Cloud Triple Origin Scripture. The Purple Cloud Immortal Qi is famous. Many cultivators communicated with each other and speculated secretly. Grandmaster, do you know the origin of this Tao expert? As soon as he broke through to the nascent divinity realm, he was able to condense a cosmic abode. He must be the reincarnation of a true immortal. On Mount Zhongnan, there were many old Taoists who wore high hats and broad belt. They looked at the white-clothed scholar in front of the hall. Spiritual Master Pure Yang's eyes flickered. I'm quite familiar with the aura of this person's cultivation method. Ancestral Master, even you can't see through his origins? The group of old Taoists were all shocked. What are you thinking about? Master Pure Yang glanced at the old Taoist. If I used the power of my main body, it wouldn't be a problem for me to see through his background. However, he also has a layer of transcendence light on his body. I think the teacher behind him doesn't want anyone to see through his background in case someone tries to plot against him. If I insist on using the power of a gold immortal, wouldn't I be causing unnecessary trouble for no reason? The old Taoists were relieved when they heard that. When a golden immortal reached the Tao integration stage, they would have a lifespan of 10,000 years. They would be immortal and indestructible. It was extremely difficult to kill them. If it was not necessary to offend a golden immortal of the same level, the other party might not necessarily use some means to disgust you if they could not defeat you. At this moment, it wasn't just Mount Zhongnan. Many people who had the intention to do so gave up. An existence that attracted the attention of a mighty gold immortal was not someone an ordinary earth immortal could target. However, it wasn't that no one wasn't tempted. Comparing the risks and rewards of killing a nascent divinity earthly immortal, especially one who was tempering his celestial abode, was enough for many people to take the risk. If he could leave his mark on the celestial abode before this nascent divinity earth immortal, it would be equivalent to saving 1,000 years of accumulation for an ordinary earth immortal. Buzz buzz. In the void, a strange buzzing sound had sounded out at some point. It was a strange sound that was extremely irritating. Tens of thousands of jade-green willow, the wisps appeared and locked onto the purple nascent divinity in the void. It's the 100 Poisons green phosphorus parasite of the 100 Poisons Taoist, the leader of the demonic sect in the south of the 100 Barbarian Mountain. This old devil is an earth immortal from the unorthodox sections. I didn't expect him to be attracted. That fellow Taoist is probably in trouble. This old devil is a very famous figure among the earth immortals from the unorthodox sections. Ordinary earth immortals can't do anything to him. The 100 Poisons green phosphorus parasite is too vicious. Even an earth immortal's nascent divinity will be in trouble if it touches him. Qin Feng's divine will had long surpassed that of a true immortal. He had long seen a short, ugly, and green-haired earth immortal from the unorthodox sects quietly approaching him. However, he pretended not to know. He allowed it to sneak closer. Seeing that tens of thousands of jade-green flame-like insects were silently attacking his nascent divinity, he had long prepared a thunder technique. It was a type of divine thunder with spatial attributes recorded in the Purple Firmament Golden Summit Immortal Scripture. Purple firmament heavenly thunder. Boom. In the starry sky, purple lightning flashed. Visible to the naked eye, tens of thousands of jade-green flame-like insects were reduced to dust amidst the rumbling thunder. The lightning flashed incessantly, draping over a black cloud that was thousands of feet wide. The black cloud was suddenly torn apart by the lightning. "Ah, little brat, how dare you!" With a furious roar, a short figure with tattered clothes and charred body escaped from the black cloud. In just a blink of an eye, he had appeared 10,000 feet away. His dark green eyes were filled with viciousness and resentment as he glared at Qin Feng. This new nascent divinity earth immortal had made him suffer such a great loss, which made him resent Qin Feng to the bone. He looked around and roared angrily. "Aren't you going to attack?" Silently, 4 figures with ill intentions appeared in the surroundings. They were all old devils from the unorthodox sects. The red-haired patriarch of Mount Qingliang, the giant demon of Huai River, Shui Wuyin, the venerable copper mountain of Mount Iron Drum, and the Yin-Yang sect leader of 9 Coils Mountain. They were all earth immortals. The 4 earth immortals from the unorthodox sects looked at 100 Poisons Taoist coldly, wishing they could grind his bones to dust. Seeing the ferocious power of the nascent divinity earth immortal, the 4 of them were already thinking of retreating. They did not expect to be exposed by this devil, and had no choice but to step down together. He actually attracted so many devils. In the Jinshan temple, the few old monks shook their heads secretly. What bad luck! Amitabha, these devils actually dared to come to Qiantang County. They must have forgotten the dignity of our Jinshan temple. On the side, Fahai was dissatisfied, his eyes filled with killing intent. He would kill anyone from the unorthodox sects that he saw. If he did not use ruthless methods, how could he show his bodhisattva's heart? Seeing the killing intent between Fahai's brows, Master Yuankong, the head of the Jinshan temple, shook his head. Fahai, this is the tribulation of that benefactor. He has to overcome this tribulation himself. You don't have to interfere. To the Jinshan temple, the appearance of such a true immortal seed in Qiantang County was not a good thing. Chapter 1202. Above the stars, Qin Feng was mostly focused on the newly born celestial body. He was at the critical juncture of his breakthrough. This was indeed his weakest moment. However, even if he was a perfected immortal, he was still not someone that 4 earth immortals of primordial spirit could handle. Kill! The red-haired grandmaster of Mount Qingliang, Shui Wuyin of Huai River, the venerable copper of Mount Iron Drum, and the Yinyang sect leader of 9 Coils Mountain were all famous earth immortals of the unorthodox sections. Since they had been dragged into this by the 100 Poisons Taoist, they might as well strike first. If they could kill this newly ascended perfected immortal, greed flashed across their minds. In the next moment, various magical treasures appeared in the starry sky. The red-haired grandmaster was holding a blood-dissipating saber. This saber was made of blood sea divine metal. Anyone who was hit by the saber would be turned into a pool of blood. The venerable copper of Mount Iron Drum was known for his sword radiance. He had cultivated a metamagnet divine sword, which was extremely powerful. The metamagnet divine sword was unsheathed. It absorbed the metamagnet divine sword from the starry sky and slashed towards Qin Feng like a river of stars. The Yinyang sect leader of 9 Coils Mountain was the third to attack. Once he attacked, countless 5 desires heavenly demons formed into numerous heavenly girls and swept towards Qin Feng. The Yinyang sect leader belonged to the northern demonic sect. Their sect liked to cultivate various demons and eventually turn them into extraterrestrial demons. They would then kill them and absorb their essence to reach the immortal soul stage. It was an unorthodox path. If one was not careful, they would be devoured by the extraterrestrial demons. However, once they reached the immortal soul stage, their combat strength would be extremely strong. Especially when they had the special abilities of the extraterrestrial demons, they would be very difficult to deal with. Among the 4 earth immortals of the unorthodox sects, the Huai River demon was the most ferocious. He seemed to have cultivated some body-refining technique. His physique was abnormally strong, like an ancient demon sage. He raised his iron staff and swung it. The entire void seemed to be shattered by his staff. On the other side, 100 Poison Priest, who was severely injured by the thunderbolt and almost had his primordial spirit destroyed, pulled out his 100 Poison Deity slaying sword, which was made from hundreds of poisons, and released a sword light towards Qin Feng. The 5 unorthodox earth immortals appeared in front of Qin Feng at the same time with all kinds of magical treasures. Qin Feng's origin soul stood with his hands behind his back and smiled faintly. He calmly reached out a hand and a purple talisman appeared in his hand. Primordial Soul Tao Art, Great Void Origin Stabilizing Talisman. A strange fluctuation appeared. The purple talisman silently streaked across the void, and in the next moment, it turned into a purple light that filled the sky. Wherever the purple light went, the 5 nascent divinity earth immortals disappeared noiselessly amidst the purple light that filled the sky. The purple light once again transformed into a purple talisman. Primordial Tao Art. At this moment, many immortals in the grotto heavens of the famed mountains and great rivers exclaimed softly. In the pure Yang shrine of Mount Zhongnan, The white-clothed scholar had a look of realization as he muttered, "He really is an ancient immortal. Grandmaster, what's going on? What primordial Tao art?" An old Taoist at the side glanced at the shrine master, perfected Lingyun, who had blurted out in a daze just now. One of the Taoists said faintly, "Primordial Tao art is a technique of the ancient immortals. It's a type of mystique that is born when one's understanding of a mystique has reached a certain level. During the ancient times, the art of weapon refinement was not very popular. Many immortals and immortals had to rely on primordial Tao arts to fight against their enemies, other than an incomparably strong physical body. Does that mean that primordial Tao arts are more powerful than today's magical treasures?" A young Taoist at the side could not help but ask curiously. The white-clothed scholar shook his head. "That's not necessarily the case. Each has its own merits." Hearing this, many old Taoists nodded. In fact, compared to primordial Tao arts, magical treasures were undoubtedly more common and easier to refine. Lu Dongbin, the pure yang spiritual master, was right. Qin Feng's Great Void Energy Stabilizing Talisman was a primordial Tao art that was born after he comprehended one of the illusory mystiques of the Great Void Immortal Sutra of the Purple Heavens Deshang. Yes, in Qin Feng's eyes, it was a heavenly law. This was a type of space-type, heavenly law. The reason why it was called a primordial Tao art was because it was called differently in the other world. At this moment, the Great Void Energy Stabilizing Talisman seemed to be boundless. It was probably because the space-type laws had been completely analyzed by Qin Feng, as well as the influence of the water and netherworld element. Within this talisman was a vast and boundless abyss. Anyone who fell into it would find themselves surrounded by darkness. Other than the pitch-black true water that could corrode an immortal's body, there was no end to it. When the 5 Earth Immortals fell into it, it was as if they had lost their 5 senses: shape, sound, smell, taste, touch. In other words, they were the 5 sensory organs of a human: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. No matter what, they would not be able to walk out of this abyss. Next, what awaited the 5 Earth Immortals was undoubtedly the guillotine blade. He casually put away the Great Void Energy Stabilizing Talisman formed by the primordial Tao art. At this moment, the formation of the heavenly abode star was coming to an end. A humongous star that was thousands of miles wide appeared in the void, emitting a faint and mesmerizing purple light. Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat. His primordial spirit touched the star in front of him. The faint purple starlight flashed like a shooting star, disappearing into the billions of stars. The heavenly abode star returned to its position. Unless the golden immortal Tao ancestor made a divination, it would be difficult for anyone to find the location of his heavenly abode star. After the heavenly abode was formed, a faint majestic force descended, enveloping his primordial spirit like a dense purple light. His primordial spirit fell like a star, locking onto Qiantang County's Qin Manor. It penetrated the roof and entered his body. He opened his eyes. Crack! A certain barrier in his body seemed to have been broken, and he instantly advanced to the level 15 true immortal realm. Everything happened naturally. There was no bottleneck at all. The 5 Qis unification and 3 flowers at one's prominence were not necessary for Qin Feng. He himself was a fusion of elements. Naturally, a field of cloud light appeared above his head. It was vast and mighty, and its brilliance shot into the heavens and earth. Faintly, purple gas swirled around it, and golden lamps could be vaguely seen. It was sacred and indescribable. In its center, countless essences of the great Tao of space collided, evolving constantly. After the creation of the creator space, the heavenly abode, and the underworld, the accumulated understanding of space broke out like a dam and merged into the auspicious cloud, causing the cloud light to be even more mysterious. It was like billions of worlds were colliding and destroying each other. This was the Tao fruit auspicious cloud that manifested after the immortal Tao De Shang. It was similar to a true god's divinity. It meant that Qin Feng had already entered the threshold of the Tao of space. According to the records in the Purple Firmament Golden Summit scripture, this Tao fruit auspicious cloud that contained the essence of the Tao of space was called the Purple Firmament, Dongshuan's immeasurable great void auspicious cloud. The first two words, purple firmament, were the foundation of the Tao ancestors' personal teachings. To commemorate the emperor of the East Peak, Jinhong Dongxian, Qin Feng had received both his immortal and divine mantras. There was a karmic connection between them. Immeasurable meant vastness and vastness. The great void was the surface of space. It also meant confusion, and represented the foundation of the Tao fruit auspicious cloud. Of course, it was more confusion. The Tao of space was too mysterious, and there was bound to be a lot of competition for Tao. Qin Feng used the Tao of Great Void as the surface to confuse the competitors who had the competition for Tao. Although the Tao of Great Void and the Tao of Space had many similarities, there were still differences. Chapter 1203. In the next half a year, Qin Feng stayed in the Qin mansion to meditate on the mysteries of perfected immortality, and occasionally received guests from all over the world. Many people came to visit him these days, and Qin Feng gradually understood the distribution of the major forces in the Divine Land. The Divine Land was now divided into 9 major sects. The 9 major sects were all orthodoxies of golden immortals from the upper world. They were divided into Qingqing Mountains Qingyang Temple, Zhongnan Mountains Pure Yang Temple, Longhu Mountains Celestial Master Sect, Kunlun Mountains Jade Palace, Amei Mountains Shu Mountain Sect, Shaohan Mountains Cold Mountain Temple, Wutai Mountains Fahua Temple, Qiantang Golden Mountain Temple, and the westernmost Nanda Temple. These 9 sects were all inherited from golden immortals from the upper world, or Buddha. Each of them had their own inheritance, and they were undefeated. In addition to these 9 sects, there were other forces that could not be underestimated, such as the 4 Seas Dragon Tribe, 36 Grotto Heavens, and 72 Blessed Lands. These Grotto Heavens were not to be trifled with. Although the people's livelihood was not obvious, their inheritance was endless. There were also some powerful figures from unorthodox sects. Although it was difficult to cultivate unorthodox sects to become perfected immortals, they could not be underestimated. The most important thing was the powerful figures from the upper world. Many of them liked to wander in the mortal world, unlike the true gods in the Linghai continent who liked to be high above and control the world. These powerful figures preferred to play in the mortal world and understand the changes in people's hearts. Even as perfected immortals, they could not act recklessly and take advantage of others. Otherwise, it would be a tragedy if they encountered the incarnation of golden immortals from the upper world. Of course, there was also the omnipresent divine path. These divine path minor gods were controlled by the heavenly court to monitor the world. In fact, Qin Feng was more interested in the omnipresent divine path of the heavenly court. It was a great enlightenment for him, especially when dealing with the 10 kings of hell. As the king of hell, he had long wanted to explore. However, according to ancient legends, there were many super-strong figures in the primitive underworld, and there might even be more than one golden immortal from ancient times. It was a hornet's nest, but Qin Feng did not dare to barge in. He did not dare to test it. It was said that the ruler of the underworld, goddess Pingxin, was not an ordinary golden immortal. She might be an extremely high-level netherworld Tao ancestor, an ancient existence from the same era as the 3 pure Tao ancestors. If he attracted the attention of goddess Pingxin, he might very well invite a wolf into the house. Obviously, if she could use the power of the netherworld to create this land and cover the endless heavens, it would be of great benefit to goddess Pingxin. The only thing Qin Feng could do was to use his influence to collect some ancient books on this subject. As a newly ascended true immortal, and with an extremely rare 1,000-year or 10,000-year spirit root, it was a great temptation for many sections. Although the underworld was mysterious, in the eyes of some sects who had the backing of the heavenly court, it was nothing much. Over the past few months, Qin Feng had received news about the underworld from the immortals who had come to visit him. Aside from familiarizing himself with the power of a true immortal in the mansion, Qin Feng had been keeping an eye on White Snake and Green Snake's actions. Just like before, White Snake had subdued Green Snake in King Qiu's mansion and became sisters. Moreover, she had obtained the ancestral dragon Purple Qi and the dragon ancestor's inheritance from Qin Feng. Just like before, Bai Suzhen had met Su Xian on the broken bridge and then hooked up with her. And it could also be said that both of them were in love with each other. White Snake had cultivated for 1,000 years, and her strength was close to that of a half-immortal. Her state of mind was stable, and her will to live forever was firm. However, she had been defeated by her feelings again and again. Moreover, she had fallen in love with a weakling like Su Xian. This kind of situation would definitely not happen in the Spirit Sea continent. The difference in strength was too great. In the eyes of a quasi-deity, ordinary mortals were simply weaker than ants on the ground. How could a huge dragon fall in love with an ant crawling in front of it? However, it really happened here. Qin Feng did not understand at first, but after becoming a true immortal, he immediately understood. A true immortal's state of mind was actually more tyrannical than a true god of the same realm. There was a realm called Mountain is not mountain, water is not water. There was also a realm called Mountain is still mountain, water is still water. The first realm was called Transcending Mortality and Entering Sainthood. The second realm was called Returning to One, Heaven and Man as One. True gods were actually very easily influenced by the divinity within their body. Gods in heaven, saints in earth. Therefore, the majority of true gods were abnormally tyrannical. In fact, a true god in this state was already very dangerous. Once lost in the divinity, it was very easy for them to completely turn into divinity and become the embodiment of laws. On the contrary, a true immortal state of mind was even more outstanding. This clearly gave them an advantage in cultivation. However, Qin Feng also discovered that it was not because of Bai Suzhen's state of mind, but more of a kind of external cause and effect. In short, in Qin Feng's opinion, this was very mysterious. Following that, Monk Fa Hai appeared and tried several times to enlighten Su Xian. Qin Feng had come into contact with Fa Hai before. After Qin Feng had become a true immortal, Fa Hai had once represented Golden Mountain Temple to pay a visit to Qin Feng, the Purple Firmament Immortal. This monk, Fa Hai, was different from other monks. He was a very persistent person. Moreover, he was a monk who was very decisive in killing. Ordinary Buddhist cultivators would mostly cultivate a compassionate heart. However, Fa Hai was different. He cultivated the Vajra demon subduing heart. The karma between Fa Hai and Bai Suzhen was too deep. The enmity of obstructing the Tao was almost endless. The accumulation of generations had already affected Fa Hai's Zen heart and almost caused him to turn into a demon. If he did not untie this knot, even if he cultivated for 10 more lifetimes, it would be very difficult for him to become a Buddha. Qin Feng had a way to replace Fa Hai's tribulation. Other than being a true immortal, he also had the outer realm true devil. Stirring and controlling one's state of mind was almost his innate ability. It was not difficult to untie Fa Hai's knot. After Fa Hai failed to wake Su Xian up several times, he encountered the death of Golden Mountain Temple's abbot. There was a period of time when he had no time to care about other things. Without monk Fa Hai's interference, Su Xian and Bai Suzhen were finally able to live happily ever after and live a peaceful and happy life. Bai Suzhen was completely immersed in the love tribulation. Her karma of repaying the debt of gratitude was resolved. However, the karma turned into marriage, becoming an unbreakable mess. However, this peace did not last long. During the Dragon Boat Festival of the second year, after drinking a cup of realgar wine, the slightly weaker green snake suddenly revealed its true form in the courtyard. The huge green snake's true form appeared out of thin air and scared Su Xian to death. The white snake was furious. Naturally, it could not bear to see Su Xian die so violently. Thinking of their profound cultivation, the two snake demons were extremely daring. They ran to the immortal elder of the South Pole and stole the immortal herb. They went against the heavens and saved Su Xian for a long time. Of course, the one in charge of cleaning up the mess was Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Qin Feng saw with his own eyes that the big shot behind the white snake personally ran to the immortal elder of the South Pole to bribe Bai Suzhen. He did not know how much he had paid. Then, the two's happiness did not last long. Su Xian was saved, but Monk Fa Hai came. Without saying anything, he directly came to kidnap Su Xian. The white snake's happy life ended again. Chapter 1204. Actually, although all of this was happening as per normal, but in reality, a part of the heavenly secrets had already changed. This scene was brought forward by several years. Originally, after experiencing many things, such as the theft of treasures from the Liang royal residence and the centipede spirit's rampage, Monk Fa Hai came to capture them. The reason for this change was that after Monk Fa Hai fought with Bai Suzhen, he discovered that the white snake and green snake's cultivation had improved too quickly. The white snake's original cultivation was about the same as Fa Hai's, and was even weaker by half. But during this period of time, even after obtaining the golden alms bowl of Jinshan Temple's inheritance, he was still suppressed by the white snake. Fa Hai discovered that the white snake had already started to transform into a dragon, cultivating the body of a hornless dragon. In legends there were several types of dragons. Those with scales were called flood dragons, those with wings were called winged dragons, those with horns were called hornless dragons, and those without horns were called hornless dragons. Furthermore, it was an innate hornless dragon. Its dragon chi flourished, and its strength was stronger than an ordinary earth immortal in the essence soul realm. The green snake had also transformed into a hornless dragon, a green hornless dragon. Although the green snake's cultivation was shallow, less than 100 years, after transforming into a green hornless dragon, its demonic chi soared, and its power was stronger than an ordinary 1,000-year-old demon. With the two snakes working together, Monk Fa Hai had already eaten dust a few times. This time, the abbot of Jinshan Temple, his master, Master Yuankong, had passed away. Before he passed away, he had used the Buddhist's Supreme Pure Land reincarnation technique to awaken him. After awakening his innate wisdom, Fa Hai had already understood the karma between him and Bai Suzhen. The karma of obstructing the Tao had to be settled. Seeing that the white snake and green snake's strength had increased greatly, he could not care too much. He went straight to their door and captured Su Xian. With this as a trigger, he would settle the karma with Bai Suzhen. To settle the karma, Fa Hai only had two choices. One was to kill Bai Suzhen, and the other was to suppress Bai Suzhen and resolve the karma with Buddhism. Other than that, there was no other way. If he did not do so, he could forget about becoming a Buddha for all eternity. Bai Suzhen's cultivation had improved too quickly during this period of time. Fa Hai already had no other choice. Rumble! The sky was filled with water roaring, and it overflowed the mountains and rivers, engulfing Jinshan Temple and even Qiantang County. Since there was no room for discussion, there was only a fight to the death. Just like in the original general trend, after the two snakes could not break through the barrier of the blessed land of Jinshan Temple, they chose to use the torrential flood to force Fahai to hand over Su Xian. In Qin's mansion, even though Qin Feng was sitting there, he could still hear the deafening roar of the torrent. With a flick of his spiritual will, a torrential flood appeared in Qin Feng's spiritual will. At this moment, all the living beings in the various counties of Yuhang were staring at the horizon in panic. Run! The flood is coming! Oh my God, save us! Above the terrifying line of water that was as tall as the heavens and earth, countless creatures could only let out cries of despair and unwillingness. The white snake and the green snake were indeed crazy to disregard the lives of millions of people for their own selfish reasons. Qin Feng sighed to himself. This was not the Spirit Sea continent. There was karma here. With such monstrous karma, it was impossible to become an immortal. Even if one did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. But if one were to insist on being selfish, it wouldn't be considered selfish. The white snake was a demon to begin with. However, my chance has indeed come. Qin Feng smiled slightly. This was a merit that came to him on a silver platter. With a flash of his body, a purple light shot up into the sky and appeared in the sky. The torrential water was even more terrifying than Qin Feng had imagined. After cultivating the flood dragon body, the two snake demons were 10 times stronger than before. The torrent that they attracted was even more spectacular than before. It even carried traces of water-type immortal qi within it. Traces of water-type immortal qi were an unbearable burden for mountains. Wherever the water passed, mountains would fall. The extremely sturdy city walls were as fragile as tofu in front of the water that contained water-type immortal qi. How magnificent and terrifying was this scene! The water swept across and reached Qiantang County in an instant. It flowed into the Qiantang River and broke the dam like a piece of tofu. Huge waves that were tens of thousands of feet high rushed towards Qiantang County. Boom! Many people's faces turned ashen. They had already given up on dodging. The huge waves were not something that could be dodged by humans. However, at this moment, a purple light appeared in the sky. The purple light danced in the air and turned into a purple mist that filled the sky. The purple mist condensed into a purple light dam among the countless living beings in Qiantang County. The huge waves crashed into the purple light dam, but it did not budge at all. The misty purple light extended for hundreds of miles, protecting the entire Qiantang County. No matter how strong the waves were, they would not be able to break through this thin veil-like purple light. Is that Squire Qin? Yes, I've seen him before. Is that really young Master Qin? Is he an immortal? Most people recognized the newly promoted philanthropist Qin in the center of Qiantang County. Every month, Qin Feng would send people to the city gate to distribute porridge to the refugees. There were tens of thousands of refugees. It could be said that his contributions were boundless. Almost everyone in Qiantang County knew someone from the Qin residence. He's indeed a living Buddha. He really is an immortal who has descended to the mortal world. With Qin Feng's help, even if the two flood dragons could stir up trouble, the huge water light could not shake the entire Qiantang County. At this moment, dozens of streams of light flew over from the sky. Many cultivators from the blessed lands and grotto heavens sensed the commotion and rushed over. Streams of light landed from the void, and dozens of cultivators dressed in different attire appeared. There were monks, Taoists, and secular people. There were even 1 or 2 demons with pure spiritual light. They seemed to be from Taoist sects, and their bodies were full of immortal qi. Greetings, true man of the purple cloud. In the lead, an old Taoist priest wearing a purple-gold bagua robe and holding a horsetail whisk walked over, immortal qi swirling around him. Among the crowd, his cultivation was the strongest. Half-celestial stage. This was the elder of the Qingwei sect, Taoist Yi Wei. Behind him were Elder Qing Yu of the Danxia sect and Master Yu Lin of the Bitter Bamboo Nunnery of the Crouching Bull Peak in the Daxiong Ridge of the Guizhou border. There was also a group of younger cultivators. Everyone looked respectful. There was even respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. Praise. This was really a perfected immortal. His action could be said to have saved hundreds of thousands of people in one fell swoop. Of course, his magic power was also shocking. That stream of immortal qi flowed for hundreds of miles and blocked the flood of hundreds of miles. How terrifying! Qin Feng waved his hand. All right, there's no need for so many formalities. Controlling the flood is more important. Qiantang County will be under my protection. Go to other places and quickly divert the flood. Be careful, this flood contains the power of 2,000-year-old flood dragons. It's extraordinary and nothing can go wrong. Yes. Everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. Everyone scattered and flew in all directions. Although the flood was a disaster, it was also an opportunity to accumulate external strength. If they accumulated 100,000 merit points, even if they were not talented enough to become an Earth Immortal of the Essence Soul Realm, they could still enter the Netherworld and become a Ghost Immortal. In the world, there were 5 Immortals: Heaven, Earth, Human, God, and Ghost. Although the Ghost Immortal was the lowest level, it was immortal. If there was an opportunity, it might be able to replace a deity position and advance to become an immortal under the Heavenly Court. Chapter 1205. In a Linhai dojo, Guan Yin Bodhisattva's expression changed when the white snake attacked. She immediately turned into light and left the dojo, preparing to descend to Qiantang County. However, when she was thousands of miles away, Guan Yin Bodhisattva's figure appeared from the light. She looked over. On the peak of Yunhai Mountain, a white-robed scholar was staring at the chessboard in front of him with full concentration. The white-robed scholar looked young, but there was a carefree aura between his brows. A gourd hung on his waist, and he held a sheathed longsword in his hand. Boundless sword qi gathered in front of him to form a huge chessboard that lay between heaven and earth. Only the black and white colors appeared. Lu Dongbin. Guan Yin Bodhisattva frowned. Clearly, this pure yang perfected cultivator would definitely not give her the chance to interfere with Jinshan Temple's matters. At this moment, the white-robed scholar who was seriously looking at the chessboard looked up and smiled at Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Guan Yin Bodhisattva, it's a coincidence that you came from afar. Lu Yen is itching to play today and has set up a game. Guan Yin Bodhisattva, why don't you play a game? Seems like lay Buddhist Lu doesn't want me to go over? Guan Yin Bodhisattva lowered her eyebrows, and the white clouds under her feet turned into a sacred and flawless white lotus platform. The white-robed scholar smiled gently. Guan Yin Bodhisattva, you must be joking. Who can stop the number 1 Bodhisattva of Buddhism? I just happen to be addicted to chess. Otherwise, how would I dare to disturb you? After saying that, he looked up slightly. How about a game to determine the victor? Guan Yin Bodhisattva sighed in her heart. Lu Yen was a pure yang sword immortal, the first immortal to attain the Tao with a wisp of connate pure yang qi. Especially after being awakened by the Taiqing sect's sect master, he had recovered his ancient memories, and his combat strength was extremely shocking. His strength was not weaker than her, the Western Pure Lands sect master, Amitabha's threat. Both of them were clones. Even if they fought, it would be difficult to determine the victor in a short time. Fahai, by Suzhin, you can only rely on yourselves for this tribulation. Guan Yin Bodhisattva was helpless. Among the 5th-class immortals, the highest class was Heaven Immortal. The Heaven Immortal here did not refer to the realm. It referred to immortals who had immortal records in the Heavenly Court. The Heavenly Court was so vast that even many golden immortals of the upper realm had to bow before it. As an immortal under the Heavenly Court, his status was naturally extraordinary. In Qin Feng's eyes, the heavenly court was indeed a colossus. The Spirit Sea continent had many legends about god-fiends since ancient times. In the legends there were also some extremely vast divine systems. But even though those pantheons had sovereigns presiding over them, in front of a colossus like the immortal Tao heavenly court, they were practically incomparable. Not only did the immortal Tao heavenly court have many powerful Tao ancestors, but its own celestial emperor was also extraordinarily skilled. Qin Feng had asked around in private. The celestial emperor of the heavenly court was a supreme existence that had existed since the creation of the world. He was of the same generation as the Tao sect's three pure ones. The heavenly court's waters ran deep. Naturally, being able to become a heavenly immortal was practically the lifelong pursuit of most cultivators. However, in order to become a celestial immortal, other than the cultivation base of an essence soul immortal, there was also the need for external technique. Cultivating 100,000 external techniques meant 100,000 merit points. That was the minimum requirement. However, it was not easy to obtain 100,000 merit points. Therefore, Qin Feng saw a scene that he did not expect. In a short period of time, wave after wave of cultivators came from the distant horizon. There was no lack of essence soul earth immortals among them. At this moment, the battle between Fa Hai, the white snake, and the green snake had reached its climax. From afar, a mighty golden light rushed out from the Jinshan temple. Qin Feng saw countless young monks, big monks, and old monks supporting the barrier with their foreheads covered in sweat. If not for the fact that most of these monks were barely supporting the barrier, the white snake and the green snake might not have been able to hold them off. Outside, only the monk Fa Hai was fighting the white snake and the green snake alone. There was no doubt about the monk Fa Hai's strength, even though he was only a half-step arhat. His strength far exceeded that of an ordinary arhat, which was in essence soul earth immortal. Buddhist cultivation was the cultivation of the 9 senses. The 9 senses were 1 sight sense, 2 ears sense, 3 nose sense, 4 tongue sense, 5 body sense, 6 consciousness sense, 7 end sense, 8 alaya sense, 9 amara sense. Once the sight sense was cultivated, one would be able to see what humans could not see. Peering into the 48,000 caterpillars in the water, seeing thousands of miles away, illuminating ghosts and gods, seeing the truth of one's heart. Once the ear sense was cultivated, one would be able to see all sound. One's body, skin, blood flow, internal organs, all would be able to hear and not be biased. Once the nose sense was cultivated, one would be able to block out filth, absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth at double the speed, purify one's heart, and make one's body light and agile. Once the tongue sense was cultivated, one would be able to recite mantras. Words would have the ability to subdue demons and devils. Once the body sense was cultivated, there would be endless benefits. It was equivalent to the Taoist spirit refining realm Deshang. One would have already stepped out of the mortal body and started running towards becoming a Buddha. Consciousness, end sense, alaya sense, amara sense were equivalent to the Taoist Dan formation, Tao foundation, Yin spirit, and nourishing. After that was the Arhat realm, which was the same as the essence soul immortal. Above the Arhat realm was the golden body Arhat, Bodhisattva, Buddha, and Buddha. In this life, Fahai's talent was extraordinary. He had long reached the 9th sense, the half-step Arhat realm. In addition to the alms bowl bestowed by Buddha, when he just got up, even ordinary essence soul immortals would have to kneel. However, the 2 snake demons had obtained a strand of ancestral dragon purple chi from Qin Feng. They had undergone a thorough transformation and transformed into flood dragons. They were even more ferocious than ordinary true dragons. The 2 women joined hands to gang up on him. Grandmaster Fahai died before he could achieve victory. In just half a day's time, a vast and terrifying ancient dragon roar descended upon Grandmaster Fahai's young but already half-crippled body. Although the two women had a few broken dragon scales, they were generally unharmed. Rumble! And with this wave, the entire Jinshan Temple's enchantment was finally shattered by the torrent. The huge wave that contained the flood dragon's demonic power engulfed the entire Jinshan Temple. At this moment, close to 90% of the monks' vitality was greatly damaged. The strength of these monks was not weak. There were even a few arhats among them. However, the enchantment was maintained too wide. Although it was done out of compassion, wanting to protect the believers everywhere, but in the end they were overestimating their own capabilities. Rumble! The torrent swept across 1,000 miles. The huge waves almost drowned the entire Jinshan Temple. Countless rays of blood dyed the torrent red. The wails of the Jinshan Temple's disciples were swallowed by the torrent's roar. The young monk lay on the mountain peak. His face was pale and his body was stained with blood. His eyebrows that were usually filled with killing intent were now looking to his side in a daze. In the torrent, the huge mountain peak that was 10,000 feet tall was only left with a small piece of rock that provided shelter for Fahai. The torrent surged past him and poured into Jinshan Temple. Countless heavily injured Jinshan Temple disciples struggled in the torrent. They were slowly swept away by the torrent and swallowed, turning into ice-cold corpses. This scene was like a nightmare that could not be awakened from. Was I too stubborn? He struggled to get up. He looked at the white snake in the sky with a stupefied expression. The green snake. White clothes fluttered in the wind. The white snake's expression was cold. Fahai, you asked for all of this. This goddess white, who was known as the white-clothed Guanyin, who had always done good deeds in Qiantang County, had a heart as cold as iron. Fourth update, a Xuanhuan book recommended by a friend. It's free for 1 million. The title of the book is Heaven Ascension Celestial Emperor's New Book. Chapter 1206. You're right, White Snake. Everything is my fault. It's my persistence that caused the deaths of so many of my fellow disciples and believers. The young monk closed his eyes as a layer of faint golden light spread out from his body. His faint voice reverberated through the torrential water, even surpassing the sound of the waves. All love comes together, impermanence is hard to come by. Life is full of fear, life is endangered by the morning dew. Love gives birth to worry, love gives birth to fear. If one is separated from love, there is no worry nor fear. Buddha says, Bodhi is not a tree, a mirror is not a platform. If there is nothing, where does dust come from? The majestic heavenly voice shook the heavens. The dense golden light penetrated the heavy clouds above his head. In the void, Fahai sat down as the golden light shone. 9 faint golden sariras appeared on his body. The Arhat sariras were the golden sariras cultivated by Fahai X. Faint golden flames appeared around Fahai's body. His expression was serene as the flames turned invisible bit by bit. Finally, a faint golden sariras appeared. They were formed from his lifetime of cultivation. The 10 sariras were connected head to tail. Dense Buddhist light surged for thousands of miles. It was incomparably ethereal and mysterious. Thousands of miles away, in the sea of clouds, Guanyin and perfected Chunyang, who were playing on the chessboard, looked in the direction of West Lake in surprise. Such a vast and pure Buddhist light was truly rare in the world. When they heard the sonorous Buddhist hymn, both of them were moved. Guanyin smiled amidst her surprise. Perfected Chunyang could not hide his surprise. He glanced at the black and white chessboard in front of him and casually threw away the chess piece in his hand. Looks like I've lost this round. He was also a carefree person. He casually removed the chessboard and cupped his hands towards Guanyin. Congratulations, Bodhisattva. It won't be long before the Western Pure Land has another Buddha. Bodhisattva smiled. It was like the rolling clouds and the blooming of flowers. The world seemed to have become much brighter. He actually comprehended his obsession in the end. In the sky above Qiantang County, Qin Feng looked at Fa Hai, who was gradually passing away with a surprised expression. Buddhism emphasized enlightenment, becoming Buddha with a single thought. He witnessed countless deaths of his fellow disciples and the calamity that befell the pure land of believers. Fa Hai was actually enlightened with a single thought. The obsession in his heart was actually dissolved just like that. Even though he had passed away due to serious injuries, as long as he cultivated for another lifetime, he would definitely be able to attain enlightenment. I didn't expect that this push of mine actually helped Fa Hai. Qin Feng was puzzled. The 10 pale golden Luohan Sariras gradually transformed into the figure of a young monk in the void. He had a benevolent expression, and a circle of Buddhist light behind him illuminated the world. White Snake, from now on, this poor monk has let go of the karma between us. However, you have stirred up great waves today and drowned the manners. You cannot be forgiven. As soon as he finished speaking, a pale golden light transformed into a huge palm that grabbed at the white and green snakes in the air. Not good. In the void, the white snake's expression changed. It could feel the extremely strong Buddhist power of subduing demons in the golden light. Its body was instantly immobilized in the void. This grab had already surpassed the realm of Arhat, and was even comparable to the golden Arhat realm of true immortals. It was close to the strength of a bodhisattva in the golden immortal realm. Qing take care of yourself. Her thoughts turned, and she glanced at Su Xian in the Jinshan temple. A trace of sadness flashed across her face, but in the next moment, it turned into determination. The white dragon pearl in her mouth suddenly flew out and turned into a white waterfall that wrapped around the green snake. She forcibly transformed into a stream of light and flew towards the horizon. He actually gave the green snake the inner core that he cultivated for 1,000 years. How affectionate and righteous! Seeing this, Qin Feng shook his head slightly. White Snake, you have stirred up trouble in many manners and caused a catastrophe, implicating millions of lives. Today, this poor monk will use the Leifeng Pagoda to guard you for 500 years. Unless the West Lake dries up and the Leifeng Pagoda collapses, you are not allowed to come out. The mighty voice sounded, and the white snake's body was like a stream of light that was sucked into the Leifeng Pagoda. Rumble! As the mighty sound of thunder fell, Fa Hai's golden body turned into 10 Sariras and fell into the Leifeng Pagoda. Sister! From afar, the green snake saw the white snake being suppressed. Her eyes flashed with tears. After a moment, she glared hatefully at the Jinshan temple, and her figure flashed, disappearing into the water. With the white snake suppressed, she would definitely not let it go. Looking at the green snake's departing figure, Qin Feng's face flashed with a mysterious smile. It seemed that it would not be long before he would have another descendant of the true dragon in this world. Not long after, among the kneeling of the remaining Jinshan temple, a golden Buddhist light soared into the sky and entered the cycle of reincarnation. After giving instructions to the future generations, Fa Hai reincarnated. Without the control of the green and white snakes, the torrential flood gradually dispersed. Under the guidance of many cultivators, it was channeled into many rivers and streams. A great disaster was finally averted. Not long after, many cultivators began to retreat. The rest could only be left to the southern Song imperial court. In the sky above Qiantang County, Qin Feng withdrew his immortal energy. The rich purple light dissipated, and his figure flashed and disappeared in the sky above Qiantang County. The world of the white snake had basically come to an end. The original ending could be said to have changed by more than half. Fa Hai had passed away, and Bai Suzhen and Su Xian were separated. Su Xian's son, Su Shilin, the future literati star, this half-demon, the future lord of stars, did not even have time to reincarnate. Although the final ending was still the white snake being suppressed under Leifeng Pagoda, the general trend had long been broken. It's time to leave. After settling the matters of the Qin residence in Qiantang County, as well as the businesses that he had acquired over the years, in the Qin residence, the power of space-time circulated, and his figure silently disappeared into space-time. In Nine Nether Sacred City, in the king's residence, a young man in a Taoist robe silently appeared in the secret chamber. The moment he appeared, Qin Feng frowned slightly. A strong sense of restraint surrounded his body, and he felt like a fish that was lacking water lying on the shore. It was extremely uncomfortable. With a thought, the chaos divine power surged and isolated his true immortal energy, and the terrifying feeling instantly dissipated. Qin Feng immediately heaved a sigh of relief. This was because the rules were not suitable. Every extraterritorial continent's rules were different. For a true God-level existence, they needed to adapt and familiarize themselves with it. If they could freely enter the extraterritorial continent without being restricted by their cultivation and strength, that would be the ruler. Qin Feng realized that unlike when he entered the White Snake world, this time, leaving the White Snake world did not consume much yuan qi from the creator space. Qin Feng slightly closed his eyes. Through the creator space, he could still feel the existence of the Grotto Heaven Star. Although it looked extremely far away, the Grotto Heaven Star was constantly absorbing the chaotic yuan qi in the chaotic void, turning it into starlight that nourished heaven and earth, as if it had merged with the galaxy. Next time, he could directly enter the White Snake world through this Grotto Heaven Star. Basically, he did not need to exhaust all his yuan qi like the first time. Next, it's time to count my gains. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of excitement. This trace of origin force that he had stolen from the White Snake world was not a small amount. World origin force was the essence of a world. If he used it for cultivation, his strength would definitely improve. Chapter 1207. In the Chief God's space, dense purple gas flowed into the milky white ball of light in the center. This was a portion of the world origin force stolen from the world of White Snake. This amount of world origin force was definitely not a small amount. The world of White Snake would probably need at least 100 years to recover. After absorbing so much world origin force, the milky white ball of light in the center looked even brighter, emitting a dense wave of light. As the master of the Chief God space, Qin Feng could clearly feel that the entire Chief God space had expanded greatly, and the space-time energy had become denser. The Chief God space, as the nation of the Chief God, was also divided into different levels. The lowest level was Creator level, and those with Creator level Chief God spaces were Creator level Chief Gods. The next level was Chaos level, and those with Chaos level Chief God spaces were Chaos level Chief Gods. Qin Feng had previously thought that the Chaos level Chief God space was Chaos level Chief God spaces, but this was actually a mistake. Although Qin Feng had upgraded his divine nation and gained a portion of the Chief God space's power, allowing him to travel through spacetime, it was still not a true Creator-level Chief God space. A true Chief God space could use the connate Chaos Chi to activate the power of creation and convert it into origin force of creation to create one's own race. However, with the harvest from the world of White Snake this time, the world origin force in the Chief God space had been converted, and faint origin force of creation had already appeared. As the origin force of creation became denser, Qin Feng would be able to comprehend this realm sooner or later. In the Chief God space, strands of origin force of creation entered his body, and his divine body absorbed them. It was as if he had been reborn, cleansing his flesh, blood, and marrow. Strands of high-level divine power that he had never felt before emanated from his body. It carried faint traces of Chief God's power. The power of creation was a power that only Chief Gods could control. Benefiting from the origin force of creation, Qin Feng felt that both his flesh and divine spirit had greatly increased in spirituality. This was very beneficial to his comprehension. This time, more than half of the world origin force he had obtained fused into the chief god space. Qin Feng kept a small portion of the world origin force, which transformed into a streak of purple light and entered the chief god light sphere. Then, he began to deduce the 11th water heavenly law in his body. The 9 underworlds, extreme Yin, star, sky, cosmic light, Azura, 9 suns, myriad spirits, Yuan, and the 9 great Xiantian true waters. This time, Qin Feng chose the mystic mysteries of the cosmic true water as the target for his derivation. The reason why he chose the cosmic primordial water was very simple. The Master God space could cut through space and time, and it already involved the time profound. Using the Creator Space's ability to deduce this ultimacy was the most suitable. Moreover, cosmic light was a type of time transformation, and the ability of time was said to be a forbidden profundity. To Qin Feng, once he comprehended this profundity, his strength would definitely increase greatly. A small portion of the world origin force he had intercepted was being consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Using the power of a chief god to deduce the profound truths of the laws of nature consumed far too much world origin force. When only a small portion of the purple cloud origin force was left, the Master God light ball stopped absorbing it. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows, and a trace of joy appeared on his face. He took a few steps forward, and one hand landed on the Master God light ball. In the next moment, a ray of silver-gray light from the Master God light ball entered his sea of consciousness. A portion of the comprehension of the laws of nature regarding the cosmic primordial water appeared in his mind. Buzz, buzz. As this portion of knowledge entered his mind, the water origin source resonated with the illusory divine spark, and in the next moment, a speck of silver light flew out from the illusory divine spark. This speck of silver light absorbed the silver light that flew out from the Master God space, and instantly began to expand, gradually forming a small silver-gray sun that revolved around the divine spark in the center. The 11th water elemental heavenly law, merciless time. Qin Feng opened his eyes slightly. The moment this water elemental heavenly law was formed, a formless vibration spread out from his body, and a strong suction force was born. Billowing vital qi flowed into his body like a long river. The Master God space rapidly swallowed the chaotic vital qi in the endless void and poured it into Qin Feng's body. Qin Feng was like a bottomless pit. It was unknown how long it took for this devouring to stop. At this moment, his body exuded a substantial pressure, and his divine power flowed, suppressing time and space. With 11 water elemental heavenly laws, he was only one step away from breaking through to the 4th stage of heavenly cultivation, strong heavenly cultivation. Once he advanced to strong heavenly cultivation, his strength would surpass that of ordinary middle heavenly cultivation true gods, and he would even be able to face true gods of innate origin source true gods head-on. This trip to the White Snake world could be said to have made a lot of money. Qin Feng finally understood why some chief gods liked to nurture reincarnators so much. This was a huge profit. However, the more it was so, the heavier Qin Feng's mood became. It seemed that in the eyes of many chief gods, the Spirit Sea continent was a piece of juicy meat. There were probably many reincarnators hiding in the Spirit Sea continent. I must find these venomous snakes. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. The Spirit Sea continent's Vipralopa end state in the future was probably greatly related to these reincarnators. Although Qin Feng was greedy, even if he stole the world origin force, he would leave some leeway and would not be too vicious. Although he had stolen the world origin force of the White Snake world, it did not hurt its vitality, and it would recover after some time. However, it was different for some chief god spaces. However, not everyone understood the principle of sustainable harvesting. Killing the goose that laid the golden eggs was the portrayal of some chief god spaces. Some even directly destroyed the world, killing all at once. The Spirit Sea continent was Qin Feng's foundation, and it was even the foundation for him to become a chief god in the future. He would never allow any chief god spaces to stir up trouble in the Spirit Sea continent. This was also Qin Feng's obsession in the bottom of his heart. He would never let the Spirit Sea continent fall into the Vipralopa end state again. Only Qin Feng, who had struggled since the Vipralopa end, would understand the despair of the powerhouses during the Vipralopa end. Rumble. In the secret chamber, the stone door opened, and fresh air greeted his face. After slightly adjusting his state of mind, Qin Feng walked out of the stone chamber. The flow of time in the primordial land and the white snake world was different. The ratio was about 1:5. Qin Feng had stayed in the white snake world for almost a year, but only a little more than 2 months had passed in the primordial land. He stepped into the main hall of the mansion. At that moment, there was a black-robed youth who looked exactly like him in the hall, sorting through the piles of official documents on the table. Upon seeing him enter, the black-robed youth stood up and said respectfully, "My lord." Qin Feng glanced at him, and the black-robed youth turned into a stream of light and entered his body. At the same time, all the big and small matters that had happened in the tribe in the past 2 months also entered his mind. Soon, his expression became gloomy. The 9 nether tribes' expansion in the first month was smooth sailing. Most of the tribes in the Westwind Plains were wiped out by the 9 nether tribe like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. However, this expansion soon encountered a great obstacle. The Spirit Sovereign tribe began to interfere, and their methods were unusually forceful. Chapter 1208. Not only did they want Qin Feng, the 9 Underworld King, to personally head to the Spirit Wilderness to ask for forgiveness, they even wanted the 9 Underworld tribe to shrink their territory and take away the Saint-grade spirit vein from the ancient Cloud Ridge. The wording was extremely strict. Furthermore, the Spirit Wilderness tribe had already sent an envoy over and was on the way. It was said that the envoy was led by 2 greater celestial kings. They did not come with good intentions. 2 kings, with a cold smile on his face, Qin Feng's figure flashed and entered the underworld earth. The huge underworld earth appeared in front of him. The dark clouds were heavy, and the dense underworld qi turned into a black wind that blew across the vast plains of white bones. The roars of underworld beasts could be heard from time to time. If he had not seen the ancient underworld, Qin Feng would definitely be very satisfied with the underworld earth. But after seeing the white snake world, Qin Feng realized that the underworld earth was still too simple. Although the 10 kings of hell were appointed by him, their positions were not clear. There was also the killing weapon of the ancient underworld, the Book of Life and Death. It could absorb the fate of all living beings. It was a treasure of the underworld. The underworld earth had not given birth to such a crucial item. There were also the 18 levels of hell that rewarded the good and punished the evil. The existence of the underworld earth should not be just a place for ghosts and gods to live in. It should have a function. One function was the key to the underworld earth, gathering the qi of heaven and earth. In the past, the underworld earth's function was only to reincarnate. But Qin Feng felt that it should be related to life and death, emotions, and even the mountains and rivers. The underworld earth should control the earth, mountain god, and even the water god. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He was very envious of the power of the heavenly court. Perhaps he could also rely on the underworld earth to build a heavenly court or a god court in the distance. The Yin mountain range had swallowed most of the West Wind Plains. The underworld Yuan Qi was even more dense and majestic. It was tall and majestic, with a terrifying aura that could support the heavens and earth. Ordinary ghosts and gods could not get close. In a flash, he stepped into the temple. The underworld Yuan Qi entered his body and poured into the god's seat of the underworld without any bottleneck. Within Qin Feng's body, the Nether King's godhood transformed into a 33-sided, diamond-shaped godhead that was filled with boundless radiance. Third-grade Hotian godhead, Netherworld monarch godhead. After opening up several underworld lands, the underworld king's deity position finally materialized. Although it was only a third-tier Hotian deity position, it was a true deity position. Anyone who refined it would be able to become the underworld monarch of the primeval lands. They would be able to rule over the underworld and become its paramount god. Qin Feng's expression was indifferent. All of this was within his expectations. A dense phenomenon was about to rush out of his body, but he suppressed it. When the deity position was born, there would naturally be a phenomenon. In particular, this deity position was the first deity position in the primordial lands. It was extraordinary, and the phenomenon it produced was even more extraordinary. Qin Feng firmly suppressed it. It was not time for this deity position to be born yet. Its potential had yet to be fully realized. Above the third-grade Nether King throne were the second-grade Nether Emperor thrones and the first-grade Nether Ancestor thrones. If he refined it now, it would be like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. At the same time, Qin Feng realized that the soul-repressing bell outside the King of Hell Manor had completely matured. That innate spiritual treasure had already been taken away by the Kunlun Empress. Actually, this kind of innate spiritual treasure could only be used to its fullest potential by cultivators of the immortal Tao. In the world of White Snake, Qin Feng was very clear about the significance of an innate spiritual treasure. It was rumored that the Tao ancestor had the three corpses secret technique. An innate spiritual treasure was the best thing to entrust the three corpses secret technique to. Other than the soul-repressing bell being matured by Providence, the Earth reincarnation pool in the Netherworld King's Temple had also completely advanced to the 6 paths of reincarnation pool, an innate spiritual treasure. It was still continuing to absorb the providence of all living beings in the world, transforming towards the Netherworld reincarnation pool, an innate spiritual treasure. This was something worth looking forward to. An innate spiritual treasure was an origin-grade treasure. This kind of treasure was extremely rare. It was rumored that only the sovereigns had such treasures. In the legends of the world of White Snake, only the most ancient Tao ancestors had such innate spiritual treasures. In the pool, the purplish-black gourd vine was happily absorbing the rare innate origin energy in the pool. The veins of the leaves were relaxed, and the other gourds were emitting a faint glow. In the 4th bud, a scarlet gourd flower bud had already hardened. The small scarlet gourd was like a scarlet cloud in the world. Qin Feng only swept a glance over it, then did not look again. He stepped onto the throne in the center. Ever since he had established the heavenly abode star in the world of White Snake, Qin Feng had been somewhat moved. He felt that perhaps, all this time, his understanding of divine kingdom transforming stars and divine kingdom transforming lands might have been a little off. Divine kingdom transforming stars might not refer to merging one's own divine kingdom into a world and turning it into a star. It should be divine kingdom projection transforming stars. Splitting a strand of the divine kingdom's power into a star projection in the various greater worlds, borrowing the power of the various greater worlds to nurture the star or to nurture the Creator's space. Perhaps this is the true essence of divine kingdom transforming stars. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He had his reasons for making such a guess. At this moment, through the Creator's space, he could feel that in the distant world of White Snake, the purple star that his heavenly abode star had transformed into was continuously transferring strand after strand of mysterious power that was beneficial to the Creator's space. This was not stealing the power of the world of White Snake. Instead, it was more like a win-win situation. The purple star helped the world of White Snake absorb chaotic energy to nourish the world, and the world of White Snake gave a certain amount of compensation to the purple star in return. Of course, all the compensation fell into the Creator's space. As for what that mysterious power was, it was very clear. It was the imprint of heaven and earth that the world of White Snake had evolved over countless years. This imprint of heaven and earth was necessary for the evolution of the Creator's space. It contained traces of the many living beings that were born in the world of White Snake. The Creator-level Creator's space could use this as a sample to create things. Draw a ladle according to the gourd. It even contained traces of the world of White Snake's countless years of operation and the fate of all living beings. All in all, this was very important to the evolution of the Creator's space. Qin Feng's idea was that since the world of White Snake could do this, could he also split a strand of the Creator's space's power in the Spirit Sea, the primordial land, and nurture a star that belonged to him? The benefits of doing this were obvious. Like the world of White Snake, leaving a star behind would allow him to reap benefits at any time and nurture his own Creator's space. However, Qin Feng had another idea. He did not want to hang the star in the heavenly river like the world of White Snake. Instead, he wanted to hang this heavenly abode star in the underworld. Chapter 1209. This was an idea that Qin Feng had had for a long time. This was very convenient. In the future, he only needed to condense a star of his own in the Spirit Sea. Then, he could bring his subordinates from the primordial land to the Spirit Sea continent. With the King God space as the foundation, he could integrate the power of the various worlds. This way, he would gradually form a God system. However, in a different world, condensing a star of one's own was not an easy task in and of itself. Normally, if a King God space entered a world rashly and interfered, he would be rejected by the world. He needed a lot of merit as an opportunity. Simply put, he had to contribute to the other world in order to open a back door and give him benefits. He had created the underworld in the primordial land, which was a great contribution to the world. He had already given enough benefits to the primordial land, so there would be no other problems. With a thought, a trace of the origin of the huge King God kingdom descended. It cut through the space-time of the primordial land and fell into the underworld. He vaguely saw a passage descending from an unknown space-time. It cut through the crystal wall of the primordial land and fell into the underworld. At this moment, many gods of the underworld could see it. In the underworld, above the Een mountain range, a starlight that had never been seen before appeared. The next moment, like a tornado, it absorbed the dense underworld energy in the underworld. What's that? Something seems to have happened in the underworld? Starlight? How strange. The underworld doesn't see the sun all year round. Why would starlight appear? Above the Een mountain range, the king must have broken through again. Many gods of the underworld looked up at the sky. At this moment, the underworld was too big. Normal gods of the underworld couldn't see the truth in a short time. That starlight seemed to have been favored by the underworld's origin. It absorbed the underworld's origin and quickly grew stronger. Qin Feng was surprised to find that he didn't need to invest any resources at all. The underworld automatically supported the transformation of the blessed land into a grotto heaven. A star that looked like a bright moon hung in the sky. Perhaps it was because it had absorbed the essence of the underworld, but this star had a faint, dark color. This star's attribute seemed to lean towards the Een attribute. It looked more like a moon that belonged to the underworld. Nether moon. Buzz buzz buzz. The dense laws of the underworld fused with the nether moon, causing the nether moon to seem even more majestic. It was like a supreme expert that was filled with a mysterious and unfathomable power. Qin Feng's divine sense landed on the newborn nether moon. The enormous dark moon was unusually desolate, its hazy moonlight and the aura of the underworld intertwined. It was constantly absorbing the darkness and negative energy of the underworld, transforming them into a more harmonious, cold moonlight. The white and cool moonlight shone down like water. Many nether beasts roared into the sky. Bathed in the moonlight, their nether energy surged. It seemed that all of their cultivations had improved greatly. The moonlight cast by the nether moon was undoubtedly a great tonic for many nether beasts. On the top of the mountain, Qin Feng closed his eyes. He could clearly feel that the appearance of the nether moon had made the entire underworld extremely excited and happy. The rules of the underworld seemed to have been further perfected. Invisible to the naked eye, more fingers of the underworld were being transformed by the underworld like a river, nourishing and strengthening the underworld. That was the resentment, anger, curses, and hatred accumulated over countless eras in the immemorial land. At this moment, it was being transformed into nourishment by the underworld. With this transformation, the power that suppressed the laws of heaven and earth decreased, and the laws of heaven and earth grew even stronger. In the immemorial land, among the many continents, some kings could already feel the joy of the world and the gathering of the immemorial land's providence. The process of unifying the divine tree continent has to be sped up. Qin Feng naturally felt the changes as well. Looks like I have to deal with the Spirit Emperor tribe as soon as possible. In the next few days, Qin Feng had been familiarizing himself with the changes of the nether moon. With the nether moon, he had gradually connected the immemorial land, the creator space, and the white snake world. Next, he had to follow suit and condense his own star on the Spirit Sea continent. In fact, there was another option, which was to refine his natal star, which could also achieve the expected goal. However, the Spirit Sea continent was not ordinary. Its foundation was abnormally strong. If he used the creator space to refine it, it would not be as smooth as the immemorial land. The foundation was different. A few days later, Qin Feng received news. The envoys of the Spirit Emperor tribe had arrived. In the central hall of the Nine Nether Sacred City, the group of envoys of the Spirit Emperor tribe was extremely luxurious. At this moment, many elders of the Nine Nether tribe were looking at this group of people with solemn expressions. From time to time, they would whisper to each other, and their faces were filled with nervousness. Among them, there was no lack of quasi-deity elders. At this moment, Qin Feng heard an extremely ear-piercing voice from behind the hall. "Miss Xiao, why do you have to reject this king? The strength of the Nine Nether tribe is too weak compared to the strength of the Spirit Emperor tribe. If you marry this king as a concubine, it will be beneficial for both you and the Nine Nether tribe. With this king helping your Nine Nether tribe, your king will at least be able to keep his life." At the back, Qin Feng stopped in his tracks. "Your Majesty!" At this moment, Yi Ding and Princess Shen Yu rushed over from the other side of the hall and bumped into the black-robed young man. The two of them were surprised. This king did not seem to be in a good mood. The two of them bowed to greet him. The black-robed young man was expressionless. He waved his hand slightly. At this moment, a voice came from the main hall. "King Spiritual Bone, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to worry about the affairs of the Nine Nether tribe." A cold and familiar voice came from behind. Her voice was extremely pleasant to the ears. Just by listening to her voice, one could tell that she was a peerless beauty. "As for the affairs of our king, you don't have to worry about it. This voice is..." Yi Ding and Princess Shen Yu Xiaolan looked at each other in surprise. There were many people with the surname Xiao in the Nine Nether tribe, especially the royal family of the mountain country. However, after the rebellion in the mountain country, more than half of their elites were lost. In terms of the most outstanding person, the leader of the branch of the royal family that had run away was still the most outstanding person. the queen of Kunlun Xiahotong. Regardless of appearance or cultivation, even in the primeval age, they were like bright pearls and bright moons. At this moment, another indifferent voice came from behind. Miss Xiahou, you should know what's good for you. King's spiritual bone status is not something that your 9 nether tribe can compare with. Marrying him as a concubine is a great opportunity and fortune. You should know that the 9 nether tribe has expanded without permission this time. It can be said that the 9 nether tribe has offended our sovereign spirit tribe. The sovereign spirit tribe's thunderous strike is right before your eyes. His voice was cold. Do you still have hope for the 9 nether king? Let me tell you, the 9 nether king has expanded without permission and started a war. This is a capital offense. He will definitely be sent to the sovereign spirit tribe to be judged. What awaits him is that even if he doesn't die, half of his strength will be crippled and he will be imprisoned for 1,000 years. I advise you to consider the king's spiritual bones request carefully. At the back of the main hall, Qin Feng smiled coldly and walked out from behind the main hall. Chapter 12:10. A group of people walked out from the back hall. Qin Feng saw the group of 15 people from the Spirit Emperor tribe. It was an extremely luxurious lineup. 15 people, and from the energy fluctuations on their bodies, even the weakest was a quasi-deity. Leading them were 2 men wearing long robes. One of them had a slender figure and looked like a bamboo pole. The other was exceptionally handsome. He had a dignified appearance and a graceful bearing. However, a trace of gloominess would occasionally flash past his brows, adding a trace of coldness to the atmosphere. On the side, the Kunlun queen, Xiahotong, was expressionless. However, if one took a closer look, one could faintly see the anger between her brows. No matter if she was the Kunlun queen or one of the 3 hall kings of the 9 nether tribe, when had anyone dared to be so rude to her? Your Majesty! Seeing the black-robed monarch walk out from the back hall, all the elders stood up and bowed. Qin Feng swept his gaze across the hall and saw the indifferent expressions of the people from the Spirit Emperor tribe. He sneered in his heart. His expression did not change as he turned around and took a few steps to sit down. He raised his eyes and said indifferently, "Who are you? Why aren't you paying your respects?" The moment he said that, all the elders of the 9 nether tribe turned to look at the group of envoys from the Spirit Emperor tribe. The 2 kings in the lead looked at each other with disdain in their hearts. This 9 nether king was about to die, yet he still wanted to put on airs. The tall and slender king, who was like a bamboo pole, smiled sinisterly. 9 nether king, are you joking? You are merely the king of a small tribe. What qualifications do you have to make the envoys of the Spirit Emperor tribe pay their respects? Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at that person. His eyes flickered with coldness. The people of the Spirit Emperor tribe had already treated the 9 nether tribe as meat on the chopping board. In the main hall, an elder stood up. He smiled and looked at the 2 kings of the Spirit Emperor tribe fawningly. Then, he walked to the center of the hall and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, let me introduce you. Your Majesty, let me introduce you. This is the special envoy of the Spirit Emperor tribe, Spirit Bone King. His Highness Spirit Bone King has an extraordinary status. We cannot neglect him." Hearing that, the skinny, bamboo-like king smiled faintly. Qin Feng glanced at the elder in front of him indifferently. This elder's strength was not weak. He was a 15th order Middle Heavenly Realm expert. If this person was Feng Yuan, he would be the leader of a tribe on the prairie. He had submitted to the 9 Hell tribe and obtained the position of an elder in the 9 Hell tribe. This person had been in contact with the Spirit Emperor tribe recently. He thought that he had done it secretly, but he did not know that everything had not escaped the eyes of the inner demon. This is the Wind Shadow King, the famous king of the Spirit Emperor tribe. Elder Feng Yuan chuckled as he cupped his hands towards the black-robed emperor seated in the middle of the throne. My king, the Spirit Emperor tribe has come with sincerity. Everyone knows the strength of the Spirit Emperor tribe. They have 5 King Realm warriors. Needless to say, the tribe's influence is spread across many desolate regions. It is far stronger than the 9 Underworld tribe. As soon as he said that, the expressions of many elders in the hall changed. This could be said to be a blatant show of strength. With these words, the morale of many elders was shaken. On the contrary, the Spirit Bone King, the Wind Shadow King, and a portion of the quasi-deities of the Spirit Emperor tribe had arrogant expressions as they looked at the elders of the 9 Hell tribes sitting in the hall. As for the quasi-deities, there are even more. After all, the 9 Hell tribe is the peerless overlord of the Divine Tree continent. Feng Yuan had a smile on his face. Of course, this old man is not afraid of death. This elder's expression changed as he looked around at everyone, especially at the black-robed emperor seated in the hall. He was impassioned and filled with awe-inspiring righteousness. If my king needs it, this elder can die on the battlefield for the 9 Hell tribe at any time. Seeing his impassioned expression, many young elders were influenced and inwardly nodded their heads. But, however, he suddenly changed the topic. But sometimes we can completely avoid some unnecessary sacrifices. We clearly know that it is like trying to smash an egg against a rock, so why don't we choose to let it go? It is not easy for the 9 Hell tribe to develop to over 1 million tribesmen. Could it be that we really want to look on helplessly as the 9 Hell tribe bleeds and become a river of casualties? Everyone is made of flesh and blood. We all have friends and relatives. Beside the central throne, there were 3 palace king thrones. 2 of them were empty, and only the Kunlun Queen was sitting on them. Hearing these words, she coldly smiled. Elder Feng Yuan, shouldn't we tie up the king and send him to the Spirit Emperor tribe? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the black-robed emperor seated on the throne. The black-robed emperor was expressionless, and no one knew what he was thinking at this moment. In the center of the hall, Feng Yuan's expression slightly changed. Seeing that many elders were silent, he sneered in his heart. Looking at the cold eyes of the 9 Hell King, his heart slightly turned cold. But at this moment, he thought of the Spirit Emperor tribe as his backer, as well as the Spirit Bone King and the Wind Shadow King. What is there to be afraid of? Although the 9 Hell King is a king, he is only a newly advanced king. As for the Spirit Bone King and the Wind Shadow King, they can be considered as veteran kings who have advanced for 1,000 years. How can the 9 Hell King be compared to them? That little bastard has always been high and mighty. Let's see how long he can be complacent for. As Feng Yuan thought of this, his heart calmed down. He looked around at everyone in the hall and said indifferently, My king, as the king of the 9 Hell tribe, you have always enjoyed the worship and support of your tribesmen. Isn't it natural for you to make some sacrifices for the tribe at a critical moment? Feng Yuan, how dare you? Beside him, Yuan Yun-er stood up with a furious face. Feng Yuan, could it be that you've forgotten who it was that spared your life back then and allowed you to become an elder? Li Wei also stood up. Beside her, Yao Han, Wu Ling, and He Qianqian, the 3 upper-class netherworld gods, also stood up. Li Wei, you don't have to be so arrogant and scold me. If the 9 Hell tribe collapses, perhaps I will be the one in charge here. Feng Yuan simply shed all pretense of cordiality. At the side, the Spirit Bone King, the Wind Shadow King, and the other experts of the Spirit Emperor tribe had different expressions. Some were sneering, and some were disdainful. Overall, the 9 Hell tribe was doomed today. And you, Yuan Yun-er? Feng Yuan glanced around. Seeing the supportive expressions of the Spirit Bone King and the Wind Shadow King, he became even bolder and more arrogant. Yuan Yun-er, who do you think you are? Feng Yuan looked at Yuan Yun air coldly. A trace of greed and lust flickered in his eyes. If it weren't for the 9 Hell Kings' unfairness and selfishness, do you think you can sit in a high-class temple and become an upper-class netherworld god with your level 14 divine power? You are daydreaming. You just used your beauty to seduce that muddle-headed king, climbed into his bed, and replaced me as the king of the 9 Hell tribe. Although he did not finish his words, he stared at Yuan Yun Air with a trace of lust in his eyes. Yuan Yun Air's face turned red. She pointed at Feng Yuan and trembled with anger. Chapter 12:11. All right, there's no need to argue with someone who's about to die. On the throne, the black-robed Emperor Lord raised his head. For the first time, there was a change in his expression. His eyes were deep, just like the eyes of a demonic god. The entire hall was filled with a chilling aura. The temperature in the hall seemed to have dropped by tens of degrees. Feeling the chilling aura, Yuan Yun Air was slightly taken aback. The anger on her face dissipated slightly as she sat back down on her seat. At this moment, everyone in the hall was looking at the black-robed Emperor Lord. The Spirit Emperor tribe members were looking at him with disdain. Could it be that he couldn't take it anymore? But this was a good opportunity to take him down. The Spirit Bone King and Wind Shadow King looked at each other. Feng Yuan laughed coldly. Was this 9 Underworld King trying to act tough? Just as Shao Chen was about to mock him, the black-robed Sovereign Emperor on the throne looked over. Feng Yuan suddenly realized to his horror that he couldn't say anything. He opened his mouth and tried his best to say something, but no sound came out of his throat. It was as if the energy in his body had lost its connection with him. In the hall, many experts also noticed the fear in Feng Yuan's eyes. Elder Feng Yuan, what's wrong? The White Bone King looked surprised. He immediately walked over and was about to get closer. At the next moment, Kacha! The sound of porcelain shattering could be heard. Under the disbelieving gazes of everyone in the main hall, Feng Yuan's body shattered into pieces with a loud bang and fell to the ground. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads. The White Bone King and Wind Shadow King's faces turned extremely serious. To kill a level 15 middle celestial expert silently, the White Bone King and Wind Shadow King were confident that they could do it. However, to be able to kill a middle celestial expert within 1 zhang of 2 greater celestial kings of the same level without being detected by the 2 greater celestial kings. That was too terrifying. At this moment, the 2 greater celestial kings looked at the 9 Underworld King as though they were facing a great enemy. The 2 of you don't have to be so nervous. It's just a traitor who died. People who are about to die are always blinded by greed. On the throne, Qin Feng's eyes silently looked around the hall. At this moment, all the elders were silent. Many felt their scalps go numb. This 9th Underworld King was even more terrifying than he had imagined. Many of the elders had smiles on their faces. Spirit Bone King and Wind Shadow King, the 2 old kings of the Spirit Emperor tribe, gave them too much pressure. It was so big that he almost couldn't breathe. Such a veteran king was definitely not someone that the Hall Kings of the 9th Hell tribe and the new kings could compare to. Each of the 2 kings had more than 1 king's blood on their hands. Their power came from stepping on the heads of other kings, and their blood was used to forge their power. The 9th Hell tribe might seem invincible in recent days, and they were expanding extremely quickly. However, when they heard that the Spirit Emperor tribe was going to punish them, many of them lost their fighting spirit. The reason why they didn't collapse and become a pile of loose sand was because of the 9th Serenity King's unbeatable battle record. But at this moment, the dark clouds above everyone's heads dispersed. This 9th Underworld King's strength was even stronger than what everyone had imagined. At least, the way he killed Feng Yuan silently was no weaker than the 2 kings of the Spirit Emperor tribe. Spirit Bone King, Wind Shadow King, I have seen your attitude. Now, it is time for this king to speak. My meaning is very simple. You only have two choices: submit or die. A cold voice came from the throne. In the main hall, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. Spirit Bone King and Wind Shadow King had cold expressions. Ninth Underworld King, aren't you looking down on us too much? Do you want the entire Ninth Hell Tribe to die with you? Wind Shadow King's face carried a trace of threat. On the throne, the black-robed emperor shook his head. It seems like you have chosen death. In the next moment, a power that far surpassed the king realm appeared above his head, and he pointed his finger. In the center of the hall, Spirit Bone King and Wind Shadow King's expressions changed. A terrifying power locked onto the space-time around the two of them. In the next moment, under the fear in their eyes, their bodies shattered inch by inch. Their skin cracked, lost its luster, withered, and turned into ashes. Under the horrifying gazes of the elders of the Ninth Hell Tribe, they withered inch by inch. After a while, only two balls of light were left. On the throne, Qin Feng's expression was indifferent. Killing two King Realm experts was as easy as stepping on two ants. After the Divine Kingdom had been upgraded to the Creator Space, he had begun to control a part of the spacetime force. Ordinary kings, unless they were fourth-level Heaven Realm experts, were like ants in front of him. With the space-time force of the Creator Space and the newly comprehended 11th Water Celestial Law, Merciless Time, he easily wiped out the vitality of the two kings with the passage of time. This kind of killing was as easy as blowing off dust. Basically, they couldn't even resist. In the hall, there was a dead silence. Two king tiers had died just like that without a sound. This kind of method was beyond the imagination of the elders and experts of the Ninth Hell Tribe in the hall. Many of them thought they were dreaming. In the void, two balls of half-godhead floated in the air, emitting a mesmerizing luster. One was a half-godhead with the wind attribute, and the other was a rarer half-godhead with the death attribute. As the divinities spread, layers of strange phenomena formed in the sky above the hall. Many Ninth Hell Tribe members could see it from 1,000 miles away. A half-godhead could be refined. Any quasi-deity who refined it would have a chance to comprehend the king concept within and increase their strength by a step. This was a treasure that ordinary quasi-deities couldn't refuse. However, the 13 Spirit Emperor Tribe's quasi-deities were sweating profusely, and their hands and feet were ice-cold. Are you willing to submit to the Ninth Hell Tribe or continue to follow the two kings? An indifferent voice came from the throne. On the throne, the black-robed monarch looked up with an indifferent expression. A terrifying pressure descended on the hall, causing many people's legs to go soft and their scalps to go numb. They hurriedly lowered their heads. Submit. We are willing to renounce the darkness and submit to the light. We will submit to the Ninth Hell Tribe and follow the Ninth Hell King. We will be willing to sacrifice our lives. At this moment, the group of quasi-deities seemed to be grasping at straws. They hurriedly nodded, afraid that they would follow in the footsteps of the two kings. Very good. Since that is the case, Elder Yuan, I will leave them to you. Properly teach them the new rules of the Ninth Hell Tribe. On the throne, the black-robed monarch's gaze fell on Yuan Yun. Yes, Your Majesty. Yuan Yun smiled sweetly. Her beautiful eyes were like water as she looked at the black-robed monarch on the throne with hidden bitterness. The black-robed monarch turned his head. He was still somewhat unaccustomed to this fiery queen's gaze. His eyes swept over the many quasi-deities and elders in the hall. Everyone, you should know what to do next, right? Advance, advance, and flatten the Spirit Emperor Tribe. Many elders looked at each other and said in unison. Their eyes were like the sun. Chapter 12:12. After the order was issued, the west wind was flattened in a short 3 days. From then on, the Ninth Netherworld Tribe began to face the Spirit Desolate. At this moment, The ninth netherworld tribe could be said to be strong and powerful. There were already more than 50 quasi-deity experts. Originally, there were 15 quasi-deities who had submitted to the three great powers in the desert. After Lin Huang submitted, the number had increased to 25. After Lin Huang submitted, the remaining 13 quasi-deities chose to merge with the ninth netherworld tribe. There were 38 quasi-deities in total. In addition, the 13 quasi-deities of the Spirit Emperor tribe who had been forced to surrender added up to 51 people. There were also the 5 or 6 quasi-deities who had surrendered in the West Wind Plains. This number was already close to 60 people. However, in the vast territory occupied by the ninth netherworld tribe, 57 quasi-deities were still too few. 57 quasi-deities and 57 high-grade underworld deities occupied less than 1/10 of the high-grade temples developed by Qin Feng. Although the Spirit Emperor tribe was tyrannical, the number of quasi-deities they had was only this number. This time, Qin Feng, the ninth netherworld king, had personally taken action. In the battle of the Spirit Emperor tribe, he had personally killed the other 3 old kings of the tribe. After that battle, the entire Spirit Emperor tribe was slaughtered. The remaining quasi-deities either saw that the situation was not right and surrendered to the ninth netherworld tribe, or they fled at the mere sight of the wind. However, as the vast wasteland fell into the hands of the ninth netherworld tribe and became the underworld, there would be a day when they would have nowhere to run. Qin Feng only took action once. The remaining matters were left to his subordinates, the 3 Hall Kings, as well as a group of high-grade underworld deities. Speaking of which, the leader of the Spirit Emperor tribe, Spirit Emperor, was indeed astonishingly powerful. He was only 1 step away from entering the 4th level of the Heaven Realm, Strong Heaven Realm. If that was the case, Qin Feng might not be able to easily kill him at that time. After defeating the Spirit Emperor tribe and killing the last 3 kings of the tribe, Qin Feng did not take part in the remaining matters. It had to be said that sometimes, having many subordinates was indeed convenient. The underworld was rapidly advancing, and the surging luck was like a dragon. Qin Feng, the underworld monarch, shared the majority of the profits with the 3 Hall Kings and the other quasi-deities. This became a source of motivation for the many underworld gods. Qin Feng had never liked to eat alone. Eating alone would only reduce the benefits he would get. Sharing was the only way to win. Using a small part of the benefits in exchange for the loyalty of most of the underworld gods. In the eyes of the abyssal deities, those territories weren't just spirit roots and spirit plants, but also pieces of fortune cake and stepping stones for them to climb higher. The gods of the underworld could not afford to slack off. Most of the experts were like this. They might not be willing to charge into battle for the sake of the ninth Hell tribe, yet for the sake of their own future and even benefits, all of them were willing to charge into battle. A great sage once said, "If capital has 50% profit, it will take risks. If it has 100% profit, it will dare to trample on all the laws of the world. If it has 300% profit, it will dare to commit any crime, even at the risk of being smashed to pieces." To the underworld gods, the many desolate regions outside the spirit desolate weren't just 300% profit. Even if Qin Feng, the underworld monarch, asked them to stop, they wouldn't be willing. In the underworld monarch's temple, Qin Feng could see from the mountain peak that the vast underworld earth was expanding at a terrifying speed every day. The underworld yuan qi in the underworld earth was getting denser day by day. In the unknown space, only Qin Feng could see it. Surging underworld yuan qi roared out from the newly born underworld earth, converging into the entire cloud region like divine dragons. A small part of it split in the center, turning into streams that flowed out in all directions of the underworld earth. Those were the places where the temples of the underworld gods, who were expanding their territories, were located. This was their war dividend. This was something that the underworld gods who were fighting outside could sense. Streams of underworld yuan qi fused into their temples, causing them to become even more mysterious. Some of them even began to upgrade from low-grade temples to mid-grade temples. The deity position in their bodies rose from low-grade to mid-grade underworld god. The upgrade of the deity position was a huge breakthrough. Many experts knew what it meant to be promoted from a 6th-grade underworld god to a 5th-grade underworld god. The underworld monarch had said that one day, when he became a hall monarch, he would obtain a true deity position. Many underworld gods believed this without a doubt. Most of the underworld yuan qi fused into the underworld earth, nourishing and stabilizing the newly born underworld earth. As for the remaining yuan qi, most of it went into the underworld monarch's temple. No, it should be said that it was in the underworld monarch's temple. The spirit vein under the cloud region's cloud ridge had advanced from the peak of the king grade to the saint grade. Under the nourishment, the underworld monarch's temple had advanced to the underworld monarch's temple. Another part of it went into the nether moon above the underworld earth. Looking up, the nether moon above his head became brighter and more mysterious after absorbing a part of the underworld yuan qi. Buzz. However, in an unknown place, Qin Feng, the underworld monarch, sensed that as the nether moon absorbed the underworld yuan qi, something seemed to be nurturing in the depths of the nether moon. An innate spiritual treasure. With just a thought, Qin Feng immediately understood. A hint of joy flashed in the corner of his eyes. This inadvertent action had actually accidentally created a natural spirit treasure. This could really be said to be the combination of the forces of the heavens and the earth. This immemorial land could be said to have benefited greatly. The outcome of the divine tree continent was predictable. After defeating the last obstacle, the general trend of unifying the divine tree continent was basically set. Qin Feng was deep in thought. There were 2 paths in front of him. He could wipe out the other 5 continents, unify the immemorial land, and return to the Linghai continent, or return to the Linghai continent directly. Of course, even if he returned to the Linghai continent, he could not abandon the foundation here. He had to send a clone to guard it. Buzz. At this moment, Qin Feng's expression changed. A mysterious force seemed to have appeared in the underworld earth. A hole was instantly torn open outside the underworld earth and extended in. An inexplicable and mysterious will came from it. Qin Feng's expression was solemn, and his expression changed slightly. In the next moment, his figure flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he saw an unimaginably huge ancient tree. Qin Feng had seen the world tree's main body in the sky before, but that huge world tree's main body was like a baby in front of this ancient tree. The surrounding white clouds seemed to be the only thing left in the world. An enormous divine power fluctuation. It was shocking. Central ancestral god. Qin Feng's eyes swept over, and his body instantly tensed up. The divine power contained in this ancient tree was too terrifying, far surpassing that of an ordinary true god. There was even a trace of the space-time power belonging to a Lord God. This ancestral god appeared out of nowhere. I'm afraid it's because of the recent expansion of the 9 Nether tribe. It's probably here to chase people away. Qin Feng guessed, but no matter what, he would not give up the advantage of the divine tree continent. In the void, a beam of green light fell from the tree trunk and 10 feet away from Qin Feng. The green light was like a bright moon, outlining a graceful and beautiful figure. In Qin Feng's eyes, it gradually turned into an extremely beautiful and radiant woman in green. The goddess in green had bright eyes and white teeth. Her beautiful eyes glimmered as she glanced at Qin Feng, who was on guard, and smiled slightly. Greetings, Your Excellency 9 Nether King, Life Goddess Green Damask of the 6 Guardian Gods of the Eastern Wilderness Divine Treasure. Chapter 12-13. The Guardian True God of the Eastern Wilderness Divine Treasure? Qin Feng was slightly taken aback. The Heavenly Life Goddess said, "Hasn't the ninth underworld king already guessed where the inheritance is?" The two of them seemed to have hit it off right away. If it were another greater heavenly king, the Heavenly Life Goddess might have been polite, but she definitely wouldn't have appeared personally. However, the ninth underworld king had done her a huge favor. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Life Goddess had appeared personally. Qin Feng pondered for a moment, glanced at the goddess, and said, "To cultivate the 8th level of the 8 Desolates' indestructible heaven scroll, one needs to gather the destiny of an entire continent to form the Son of Heaven's hidden dragon position. It seems that the so-called Eastern Desolates' divine treasure should be this continent. However, I have never been able to guess the conditions for the hidden dragon position to appear." Seeing that the Heavenly Life Goddess didn't seem to want to make things difficult for him, Qin Feng's expression relaxed slightly. In fact, Qin Feng had already guessed what the Eastern Wilderness divine treasure was. This was the hidden dragon godhead, but he had never discovered it. He had once thought that he would unify the entire continent. However, after unifying the entire continent, he hadn't discovered any traces of the hidden dragon godhead. However, with the help of the underworld's power, he didn't need the hidden dragon godhead anymore. It could be said that he had already walked a different path from the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor. However, even now, he couldn't help but be curious. Actually, this isn't difficult. The Heavenly Life Goddess smiled as she looked at the vast sea of clouds. Back then, the Eastern Wilderness Great Emperor didn't intend to leave behind the inheritance. He always thought that every chief god should have their own path. Things like inheritances are only left behind by people who are about to die. Her expression was calm. From her tone, Qin Feng could tell that this goddess had an unusual relationship with the Great Emperor. "That's true." Qin Feng nodded in agreement. "Actually, from the beginning, this place was just a hope that the Eastern Wilderness gave the 6 of us." "Hope?" Qin Feng raised an eyebrow and looked at the Heavenly Life Goddess in surprise. "Back then, the 6 of us, that is, me and the other 5 true gods of the Eastern Wilderness divine system, found the Great Emperor and asked him for the path of the Great God." The Goddess of Life looked indifferent, as if she was talking to herself. "I, Goddess of Life Lu Qi, true God of spiritual flame Zhu Rongyan, true God of earth Rock Shifeng, heavenly Miao demon God Yinji, true God of glory Situ Sheng, and true God of darkness Yang Shi, the 6 of us are the most promising experts in the Eastern Wilderness divine system to become lords. Since the end of the Eastern Wilderness era in the Primordial Age, until now, we don't know how long we've persevered. Each of us has been guarding a continent. We don't know when we'll get the opportunity to become an overgod. In fact, many of us have started to have doubts, including me." The Goddess of Life suddenly turned around and looked at the black-robed young man who was right in front of her. It sounded like a whisper, but it also sounded like a dream. "It wasn't until you appeared that I finally saw a turning point." There was a trace of a smile in her eyes. At this moment, it was as if the world had lost its color in front of her sweet smile. Even Qin Feng couldn't help but be dazed for a moment. Her expression gradually became hazy, and a thick layer of space-time energy flowed around her body. Originally, according to the rules set by the Eastern Wilderness, after intruders like you have unified the continent, you only have 2 choices. One is to become a member of the Eastern Wilderness divine system. The other is to give up everything and leave the primordial land. We'll release you back to the Spirit Sea. Either join or give up everything. These 2 choices were too difficult. First, join and become a member of the Eastern Wilderness divine system. In the eyes of many experts, the Eastern Wilderness divine system was a rare thing. But don't forget that once one became a member of the Eastern Wilderness divine system, one would have to pay tribute with Providence. It would be quite difficult to break through to become an overgod in the future. Also, the overgod's consent was required. It was very restrictive. Of course, to ordinary true gods, this was also a choice. Perhaps only 1 in a million true gods could break through to become an overgod. To ordinary true gods, becoming an overgod was almost an extravagant hope. The Eastern Wilderness divine system was powerful and powerful. Joining them might be a way out. However, to Qin Feng there was no need for that. His divine nation had already broken through to become a overgod's space. His chances of breaking through to become a overgod were much higher than ordinary true gods. As for the second choice, Qin Feng had opened up such a huge underworld. How could he give up such a huge foundation just like that? Seeing the 9th Underworld King's expression, the Heavenly Life Goddess smiled. However, you're different, 9th Underworld King. I'm indebted to you. I can give you a third choice. Qin Feng didn't know if it was an illusion, but he sensed a hint of a fox in the goddess' tone. The goddess in front of him seemed to be a little fox that was about to steal a little hen. Qin Feng was wary as he spoke. Your Highness, please tell me. The Heavenly Life Goddess smiled brightly. This god's condition is very simple. As long as you agree to this god's condition, not only will you keep your underworld, I will even give you the Divine Tree Continent. Giving me the Divine Tree Continent? Is it so good? Qin Feng's heart sank. The Divine Tree Continent could already begin to give birth to deity positions. Even a overgod would be tempted by such a continent. However, this goddess was saying that she would give it to him directly. Qin Feng increasingly felt that there was something fishy going on here. Qin Feng was wary as he spoke calmly. What conditions? You don't have to be so nervous, 9th Underworld King. Your strength has already far surpassed ordinary true gods. I won't eat you, right? The Heavenly Life Goddess was all smiles. Seeing that the young king was still wary and unfamiliar, the goddess snorted lightly. Kid, I know that you've cultivated a overgod space. My conditions are very simple. Within 1,000 years, I want to share a portion of the brand of heaven and earth that you've obtained from each of your activities in various major worlds. Brand of heaven and earth? Qin Feng's expression was slightly startled as he glanced at this extremely beautiful goddess. This requirement wasn't too high. It was lower than he had imagined. Could it be that she was up to something? However, Qin Feng soon shook his head inwardly. Although the brand of heaven and earth was precious, it wasn't something that he couldn't give up. He just needed to make an extra copy of it every time he went to various major worlds. I can agree to this condition. Great. Then I hope that we'll have a pleasant cooperation in the future. The Heavenly Life Goddess was overjoyed. The brand of heaven and earth didn't seem to be important to Qin Feng, but it was extraordinarily important to her. She had already broken through the threshold of becoming a chief god. The next step was to build a overgod space. However, a new overgod space could be said to be extremely fragile. Ordinary chief gods had to be well-behaved for at least 3,000 years after their breakthrough to accumulate resources for their overgod space before they could attempt space-time travel. A overgod space like Qin Feng's, who was able to travel through spacetime as soon as they broke through to the next level, was really rare. If not, the Heavenly Life Goddess wouldn't have coveted Qin Feng and wanted to hitch a ride. Chapter 12-14. By hitching a ride with Qin Feng, not only could she save 3,000 years of growth time in the chief god space, but she could also obtain a lot of valuable first-hand information from Qin Feng without any risk. She could save tens of thousands of years of precious time, and all she had to do was give up the Divine Tree Continent. Ever since the laws of the Divine Tree Continent had matured and been plucked by her, its use had become very limited. She had used a continent that was of little use to her in exchange for such benefits. This was a huge gain. Laughing in her heart, the goddess of life and Qin Feng signed the chaos contract and then sent the young Nine Underworld King back to the Divine Tree continent. After returning to the underworld, Qin Feng pondered for a moment and understood the ancient goddess of life's plan. On the mountain peak, he smiled slightly. He did not mind. This was a win-win situation. The goddess of life would get the precious opportunity to grow in the chief god's space, and he would get the entire Divine Tree continent. As for the other 5 continents? Qin Feng shook his head slightly. The other 5 continents also had true gods guarding them, but they were not as easy to deal with as the goddess of life. Moreover, the 5 continents were actually separated, and the laws of heaven and earth were different. What he needed to do now was to completely control the Divine Tree continent. Now that the laws of the Divine Tree continent were complete, and it was still expanding, as long as he controlled this continent, the underworld would have a chance to upgrade. The God of Hell position would also upgrade to the God of Hell position, and even the God of Hell position. At that time, it would be the time to invade the other continents, but he could also find an opportunity to use the chief god's space to send some people over to invade. Half a year later, as the Divine Tree continent fell into the hands of the 9 Underworld tribe, the expansion of the 9 Underworld tribe had almost reached its limit. The remaining time was to completely digest the resources in their hands. Qin Feng was temporarily freed from the war of the 9 Underworld tribes' expansion. In the God of Hell's temple, have you really decided? On the God of Hell's throne, Qin Feng looked at Yi Ding below the temple. I've decided to stay here for the time being, Yi Ding said in a low voice. That's good. This is a huge stage, and it's very suitable for you to display your abilities. I'll leave a clone here to help you build this place. Qin Feng smiled. Yi Ding's combat prowess might not be outstanding, but his ability to manage government affairs was still very outstanding, although there might be more fortuitous encounters in the Spirit Sea continent. However, the 9th Hell tribe had the resources available to them, and they also had the assistance of the position of the god of the underworld. So, the progress of their cultivation wouldn't be slow. Have you decided to stay here too? Qin Feng looked at Shi Tong and the Shi Han sisters. Thanks to their status as the Netherworld King's maids, the 2 sisters were given 2 lesser king-tier temples, and their cultivation soared. In just a year, Shi Tong had advanced from 8th level True Sage to 10th level Great Sage. She was a great sage of the shadow element, and after entering the underworld, her mastery of the netherworld element had improved by leaps and bounds. His big sister Shi Han had also gone from a 10th level light attribute Great Saint to an 11th level World King Saint. I'll stay. Shi Tong pondered for a moment before coming to a decision. This place was too suitable for her. It was where her fortuitous opportunity lay. Master, I'll follow you. Shi Han, the silver-haired girl, chose to leave. Shi Tong glanced at Shi Han and then turned her head away. The 2 sisters had been struggling for a long time, but now her thoughts had faded. She only wanted to grasp the present and grasp this once-in-a-lifetime lucky chance to prove her Tao and become a true divinity. This was the divine seat. This was a lucky chance that countless powerhouses yearned for in their dreams. However, this lucky chance was right in front of her. She no longer wanted to lose this lucky chance that countless powerhouses had been waiting for countless epochs because of some meaningless struggle. She's grown up. On the throne, Qin Feng faintly smiled. When he first saw Shi Tong, she was like a little girl who hadn't grown up yet. Her entire body was covered in thorns, and she would hurt anyone she touched. She and her big sister Shi Han were like lifelong enemies, never admitting defeat no matter what. As for the silver-haired girl, she was still the same. She was intelligent to begin with, and after following by Qin Feng's side for so long, she had become increasingly mature. However, her willpower was also abnormally firm. Qin Feng knew that even though she had submitted to him and become his servant, her mentality had never changed. She had never thought that she would become his plaything one day. Shi Han was a very smart woman, and she was also a very determined woman. Qin Feng admired this very much, even if this woman had never loved him before. Half a month later, after settling the matters at hand, Qin Feng left a clone to guard the primordial land, and prepared to return to the Spirit Sea with Shi Han. It was worth mentioning that the clone was no ordinary clone. It was a clone of the Netherworld King that Qin Feng had specially refined using the origin of the Netherworld Earth. Naturally, to leave the primordial land, the Netherworld King's divine seat in his body needed to be nurtured by the Netherworld Earth's providence. It was not easy to bring it away, so he left it with the Netherworld King's clone. His divine will connected with the creator space, and the space-time energy formed a spiral that enveloped Qin Feng and Shi Han. The two silhouettes disappeared into the void without a sound. The moment Qin Feng and Shi Han's figures disappeared, a huge ancient divine tree that resembled the firmament appeared in the void. Above the divine tree was a huge kingdom. In the kingdom, the goddess of life looked indifferently in the direction of the divine tree continent and smiled slightly. The next moment she closed her eyes. At this moment, in another direction, a black-clothed goddess in the void stared in the direction of the paradise of life and the divine tree continent like a poisonous snake. Life, you bitch, you want to break through to the over-god realm? Dream on. No matter how big the price I, Inji, must pay, I will not let you have it easy. As if gnashing her teeth, the black-clothed goddess's eyes flickered with resentment. It won't be long before those human ancestors arrive. Goddess of life, divine tree continent, I'll let you live freely for a few months. Murderous intent flickered in her eyes as her gaze fell on the huge ancient divine tree. Her figure flashed and disappeared on the spot, landing on another continent. The appearance of the Netherworld Earth was a new attempt for her. She might be able to replicate the Netherworld Earth herself. In the Spirit Sea, in the realm of stars, above a tall barren mountain, an invisible stream of light rushed out of the void and flew over a mountain stream in an instant. Rumble! Hearing the rumbling sound of water, Qin Feng opened his eyes. Scanning his surroundings, he closed his eyes slightly and sensed several huge galaxies above his head. Qin Feng opened his eyes, and a trace of joy flashed across his eyes. I'm back. After almost 2 years, I'm finally back. I wonder how Xingqian School is doing? A trace of seriousness flashed across Qin Feng's face. When he left, the alliance of sects besieged Xingqian School, and some teams of reincarnators from the creator space were also involved. Xingqian School was attacked from both sides. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.